The prequel era was defined by 3 different villains of the trilogy. Each one of them should represent Vader's fall to the dark side. Darth Maul being a Sith warrior who embodies the raw hatred of the dark side, Count Dooku being a disillusioned fallen Jedi, and General Grievous being a cyborg. In this video, we'll cover each of these 3 iconic villains' backstories and entire life one by one in chronological order. Starting off with none other than Darth Maul.
Imagine the depths I would go to stay alive, fueled by my singular hatred for you.
Chapter 1. Path to a Sith Lord. Maul, a male Zabrak, was born on Dathomir. His mother was Caecina, a Night Sister belonging to Mother Talzin's coven, and his father was a Zabrak Night Brother, who was slain shortly after Maul's birth according to the Dathomirian tradition. As a Night Brother, Maul belonged to a clan of male Zabraks who served as warriors and subordinates to the dominant Night Sisters. Maul had 2 blood brothers, Ferrell and Savage Opress. His mother, Caecina, wished for at least one of her sons to escape Mother Talzin's influence. Less than a year after Maul's birth, she encountered Darth Sidious on Dathomir, who at the time was still the apprentice of Darth Plagueis. She pleaded with him to take Maul away from the life of a Night Brother. Although hesitant at first, Sidious sensed the infant's strong connection to the Force and agreed to take him, seeing the potential of forging his own apprentice out of the infant. Maul spent his early years under the care of droids, particularly TDD-9, at a secret facility on Mustafar. A year after he was taken, Sidious received permission from Plagueis to train him as an apprentice. However, Plagueis instructed Sidious to withhold the deeper Sith knowledge, intending for Maul to serve as an assassin rather than a Sith Lord. Life as Sidious's pupil was brutal. Soon after Maul could start training, Sidious personally branded him with black Sith tattoos in order to push him more toward the dark side. During his training, which included agility exercises as well as working with a computer console to increase his knowledge on the galaxy, any mistake was met with incredible cruelty. During a training exercise, TDD-9 struck Maul repeatedly with a wooden staff. In frustration, Maul instinctively used the Force to pull the weapon into his hands. When TDD-9 reported this to Sidious, the Sith Master was pleased. This was the first time Maul had used the Force actively. Sidious went on to take Maul to Tost, where he started teaching him in the ways of the Force. In their first exercise, Sidious threw rocks at the young boy in order to fuel his rage. Encouraging Maul to use his anger and pain, Sidious watched as the boy eventually retaliated, throwing some rocks back at him. Pleased by the result, Sidious brought the boy back, encouraged that his pupil was going to be a great asset. Back on Mustafar, Maul endured grueling training, including being chained upside down and lowered toward a vat of acid, forcing him to escape using the Force. During this time, Sidious started educating Maul about Sith history, detailing conflicts with the Jedi, including Naga Sadow's Great Hyperspace War, the rise of Exar Kun and Ulic Qel-Droma, Darth Revan and Malak's betrayal, as well as the fall of the Brotherhood of Darkness. He also explained the Rule of Two established by Darth Bane. Sidious instilled in Maul a deep hatred for the Jedi, convincing him that, had it not been for the Sith, the Jedi would have found him on Dathomir and turned him into a mindless, obedient servant for the Republic. To demonstrate this, Sidious took Maul to Coruscant, where they stood disguised among tourists outside the Jedi Temple. Cloaked by the Force, Sidious pointed out individual Jedi, whispering to Maul about their ignorance of the Sith's impending return. Delighted in the presence of his future enemies, Maul eagerly absorbed his master's lessons, preparing for the day he would strike against the Jedi. Later down the line, during another visit to Tost, Sidious introduced Maul to a lightsaber with which Maul effortlessly cut down every tree in sight. His decade of training has slowly paid off. He had become a valuable weapon for the Sith. At the age of 10, Maul was sent to the Academy on Orsis to hone the skills of an assassin. Sidious instructed him to refrain from using the Force to ensure he could rely on his raw abilities as well, rather than just the Force. There, he would train alongside other students in the ways of becoming an assassin. During a break from his assassin's training, Sidious took Maul to the icy world of Megiddo. There, he endured grueling physical challenges, sprinting up and down mountains with near-perfect control. Expecting praise, he was instead hurled into a freezing lake by Sidious, who coldly observed as Maul struggled for survival. Left with no choice, the young Zabrak transformed his fear into anger and fought his way back to shore, only to be met with indifference from his master. The lesson was clear. Pain and suffering were his only companions in this world. Give in to anger, pain, and let it fuel you, or perish. The final trial of Maul took place on Hypori, an Outer Rim world where Maul was abandoned. For weeks, he was hunted relentlessly by hordes of assassin droids, forced to survive with no support. After a month of Maul being pushed to his absolute limits, Sidious returned and challenged his starving, weakened apprentice to a lightsaber duel. Maul, though resilient, was easily defeated. Sidious cast aside Maul's weapon and declared his failure, revealing that he had secretly been training another apprentice to replace him. Overcome with rage and betrayal, Maul lunged at his master, sinking his teeth into Sidious's hand and spitting the blood back in his face. But as his strength faded, he realized he was powerless against the Dark Lord. Resigned to his fate, he prepared for death. Sidious raised his lightsaber and struck. The blade turned out to be harmless. It was only a training saber. Laughing coldly, Sidious revealed the truth. There had never been another apprentice. By attempting to kill his master, Maul had passed the final test. He had proven himself worthy of the Sith. Sidious bestowed upon him the title of Darth Maul, Dark Lord of the Sith, and took him to Coruscant's industrial district. There, a medical droid tended to his wounds, preparing him for the dark future that awaited. Maul's status as a Sith Lord was deliberately kept hidden from Dark Plagueis, as it would have violated the rule of two. Sidious, however, had always intended to claim the mantle of Dark Lord for himself, plotting all along to betray his own master when the time was right. Chapter 2: Assassin for the Sith. Now that he had officially become a Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Maul was often sent on missions for his master, assassinating politicians, merchants, and crime lords. All these missions served one singular greater goal: to cover up the Sith's dealings with different factions, destabilize the Republic while keeping the Sith's involvement hidden. The Sith shall eventually rise again in a grand plan set out by Plagueis and Sidious. For his missions, Maul was provided with a Sith infiltrator called the Scimitar, a heavily modified star courier equipped with a cloaking shield generator in order to carry out his missions in secret. After his first successful missions, Maul longed for a challenge, a Jedi to kill. Maul soon learned of a Jedi Master called Ciolo Urmanka, who had abandoned the lightsaber for a purer fighting style. Maul sought him out and immediately attacked him. To Maul's surprise, he was easily outmatched, as Manka used only a wooden staff to disarm and wound him. However, instead of delivering the killing blow, the Jedi allowed Maul to escape. Refusing to accept failure, and fearing the consequences if he had revealed to a Jedi that he was a Sith assassin, Maul came up with a strategy. In order to beat him, he constructed a double-bladed lightsaber, inspired by ancient Sith schematics and the old Zabrak weapons. When he confronted Manka again, he feigned the same attack pattern, allowing himself to be disarmed. As Manka moved in to finish him, Maul activated his second blade, impaling the Jedi and securing his victory. Proud with himself, Maul returned to Coruscant and informed Palpatine of his success over a Jedi. Palpatine, pleased with his apprentice's progression, congratulated him on his victory. During this time, Palpatine aimed to infiltrate and manipulate the Trade Federation, using them as a tool to initiate the Sith's grand plan and destabilize the Republic. To gain control over the Federation, Palpatine sought out Newt Gunray, an ambitious member of the Trade Federation who was easily swayed to follow Palpatine's orders in exchange for power and influence. To gain the goodwill of Gunray and for him to secure some wins for the Trade Federation and rise through their ranks, Palpatine had Maul do several missions in order to help them. Maul could not hide his skepticism about why the Sith were involving themselves with the Neimoidians. To him, they were weak-willed, greedy, and cowardly. Sidious agreed but reminded him that despite their spinelessness, the Sith needed them for their greater plans. Maul was then sent to Kryia to force the planet's spice merchants into signing an agreement with the Trade Federation, which would then be granted as a win to Gunray. Although he was successful at first, one merchant ignited a protest that soon escalated into a full-scale rebellion. In an act of defiance, the people destroyed their entire spice supply rather than submit. With the entire population against him, Maul could not fight them all and was forced to report his failure to Sidious. Enraged, the Dark Lord lifted his apprentice by the throat with the Force and nearly choked him unconscious. It was a punishment Maul would never forget. Failure under the Siths could mean his death, and he wouldn't allow that to happen ever again. Next order of things, Maul was sent by Sidious to eliminate the leadership of the powerful crime syndicate Black Sun. Black Sun had connections to the Trade Federation, and the Sith didn't want them to potentially leak their involvement with them. Also, they had been involved in an assassination attempt on Darth Plagueis, thus they also wanted to exact their revenge. Maul proceeded to infiltrate the Black Sun fortress and massacred everyone in there. Every guard and the entire leadership was killed. Maul returned to Coruscant and reported his mission's success to Sidious. Pleased, Sidious told Maul to return to Mustafar, satisfied that Black Sun was now in disarray and no longer a threat to the Sith's grand plan. Later, as part of a greater plan to destabilize the Republic as well as removing the threat of the Yunchuri warriors, Plagueis and Sidious orchestrated the Yunchuri uprising, provoking the Yunchuri into attacking the Republic and the Jedi. Darth Maul was sent to recruit a smuggler and intimidate him into compliance. Under the Sith's orders, the smuggler supplied the Yunchuri with weapons, leading to their rebellion against the Republic. When the Yunchuri attacked the Jedi Temple, Maul observed but did not interfere. As the crisis came to an end, Maul noted that the Jedi had emerged victorious, but Sidious saw it differently. The Yunchuri were no longer a threat thanks to the Jedi and the Senate's intervention, which played directly into the Sith's hands, and granting them a small victory. Maul insisted that if he had been deployed alongside the Yunchuri, more Jedi would have died, even going as far as to say that he could have slaughtered every Jedi there, including the younglings and council members. Sensing Maul's bloodlust and eagerness to fight the Jedi, but also his growing arrogance, Sidious went on to remind him that patience was essential. Their time would come to reveal themselves. The Jedi's destruction was not yet their immediate goal. With that lesson imparted, Sidious turned his attention to his next move, setting Gunray up to become the sole controller of the Trade Federation. To achieve this, Maul was sent to destroy 2 rival mining corporations on Dorvala to ensure the Trade Federation could take control over Davala's rich ore trade. Maul manipulated both companies into hiring mercenaries to sabotage each other, leading to their mutual destruction. When the surviving leaders realized they had been deceived, Maul led them into a final battle, then eliminated them himself. He altered evidence to frame each other for the conflict, causing the companies to collapse. Returning to Coruscant, Maul listened as Sidious contacted Gunray. The deception had worked and the Trade Federation gained control over the ore trade. Dorvala now had Senate representation through the Federation, and through this victory, Gunray secured a permanent seat in the Directorate. In a meeting on Eriadu, the other members of the Directorate were assassinated by droids set up by Sidious, making Gunray the sole operative of the Trade Federation. The Sith now had a puppet in power of one of the most influential companies of the galaxy. Over time, the Federation started to build a droid army under the pretense to secure their trade shipments from pirates, all under the influence of the Sith. As the Federation remained stifled under the Republic's newly implemented taxation of the free trade routes, Sidious and Gunray had started to discuss countermeasures, one such being the blockade of Naboo that had been long planned by the Sith. Reassured by Sidious's confidence that Naboo's significance would ensure widespread galactic interest in their blockade, Gunray moved forward with the plan. Deputy Viceroy Hath Monchar, a high-ranking Neimoidian in the Trade Federation, learned about the blockade of Naboo and saw an opportunity to escape and profit by selling this sensitive information. He fled to Coruscant as he found a Sith holocron with the plans laid out, intending to sell it to the highest bidder. Recognizing the danger if the blockade and the Sith's involvement was to be revealed, Sidious ordered Maul to eliminate Monchar and anyone he had contacted. Maul tracked Monchar to his hideout, killed him, and attempted to recover the holocron, only to realize it had already fallen into the hands of information broker Lorn Pavin. This forced Maul into a relentless pursuit across Coruscant, where he ran across and clashed with 2 Jedi, defeating them both. However, Pavin had escaped due to the Jedi's intervention. Pavin ultimately smuggled the holocron to a political ally, unknowingly delivering it into the hands of Darth Sidious, disguised as Senator Palpatine. Maul later tracked Pavin down and executed him, ensuring no witnesses remained. Maul went on to erase any of the Sith's involvement, and the Trade Federation was able to proceed with the blockade of Naboo, setting the stage for the conflict that would lead to Palpatine's rise to power. Chapter 3: Invasion of Naboo. The Neimoidians wasted no time positioning their ships around Naboo, declaring that any attempt to break the embargo would be met with deadly force, and that the Naboo people would starve unless the Republic repealed the new trade regulations. Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum, sensing the political instability of the Naboo blockade, secretly enlisted the Jedi's Council's help. He discreetly sent Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi to negotiate with the Trade Federation, catching both Darth Plagueis and Sidious off guard. The Jedi's involvement threatened to expose the Sith's hidden influence, forcing them to accelerate their plans. Sidious ordered the Trade Federation to immediately eliminate the Jedi and invade Naboo ahead of schedule. To calm Gunray's fears of Republic intervention, Sidious assured him that the Sith would take steps to legitimize the occupation. Queen Amidala would be forced to sign a treaty that would officially place Naboo under Federation control. Plagueis saw this as the moment for the Sith to finally reveal themselves, and Sidious vowed to ensure Darth Maul was prepared for the next stage of their plan. Darth Maul had been conditioning his mind and body, rigorously training in the work's combat chamber, when Sidious summoned him via comlink to the strategy room. As he entered, Maul immediately noticed his master's irritated expression. Sidious ordered him to remain in the shadows and listen as he spoke with the Trade Federation leadership who reported on the Jedi's escape. Though Maul remained silent, excitement surged within him at the opportunity to finally face the Jedi in battle yet again. A transmission from the Neimoidians soon followed, informing the Sith that the Jedi and Queen Amidala had escaped the blockade. Furious, Sidious called Maul forward, declaring to the fearful Neimoidians that despite their incompetence, his apprentice would locate their lost ship. A transmission originally sent by Naboo's governor, C.O. Bibble, had been intercepted and edited by Maul into a false distress signal, designed to lure the Queen and her allies into responding. Tracking the modified signal, he determined that they had fled to Tatooine. Sidious ordered him to locate the Jedi first, and then return the Queen to Naboo to sign a treaty, legitimizing the Trade Federation's occupation. Confident in his mission, Maul departed Coruscant aboard the Scimitar. Upon exiting hyperspace, Maul was delayed when he was ambushed by Togorian pirates. To eliminate all witnesses, he infiltrated the pirate freighter and slaughtered its entire crew. The battle left him with a wounded leg, but he resumed his course for Tatooine in a hurry, aware that the pirates might have delayed him long enough to potentially miss the Jedi. He landed on Tatooine under the cover of night, far from the planet's major settlements. He deployed his 3 DRK-1 probe droids to search for the Jedi and the Queen's ship. This allowed him time to tend to the leg wound he had sustained during his battle with the pirates. At dawn, Maul discovered tracks in the sand, leading him to an ambush set by Tusken raiders. Choosing to avoid unnecessary conflict, he retreated, preserving his strength for his true target. His withdrawal was hastened by a signal from his probe droids, which had located a Jedi Master near the Mos Espa Grand Arena. Tracking the Jedis there, Maul investigated a smuggling vessel, Dusty Duck, but instead of the Queen, he found and killed an unfortunate bystander on the smuggler's ship. Soon thereafter, his probes confirmed the Queen's starship was in the outskirts of Mos Espa and that the Jedi was heading there. Wasting no time, Maul sped toward the location of his speeder. Upon arrival, he sensed an unexpected presence, a young boy strong in the Force. Though curious, Maul set aside the thought, focusing solely on eliminating the Jedi and capturing the Queen. Springing from his speeder, Maul ignited a single blade of his lightsaber and engaged the Jedi in combat. The duel was brief but intense, and as the fight went on, he sensed the Jedi tiring. Fueled by the pain in his wounded leg, he pressed the attack, confident that victory was within his grasp. However, the boy had boarded the ship and warned the crew. Their ship took off, and the Jedi leaped onto the ship's boarding ramp, carrying him to safety. Maul watched, seething as the ship disappeared into the sky. Tasting sand and blood in his mouth, he felt the sting of failure. He had been denied his prize, yet instead of despair, he embraced the shame, using it to fuel his rage. Returning to the Scimitar, he transmitted his report to Coruscant, omitting any mention of the Togorian pirates and Tusken raiders. His mission had not gone as planned, but the hunt was far from over. As Maul returned to the works, he braced for the worst, expecting Sidious to unleash his wrath over his failure on Tatooine. However, to his surprise, his master was not angry. Instead, Sidious calmly questioned him about his duel with the Jedi, asking if Maul believed he could have won had the fight continued. Without hesitation, Maul affirmed that he would have, noting the Jedi's age and fatigue. Sidious revealed that Jedi's name to be Qui-Gon Jinn and acknowledged him as a formidable warrior. Despite Sidious's unexpectedly composed demeanor, Maul wrestled with his own frustration. He then quickly realized that regardless of his failure, the Queen would soon bring herself to Coruscant to plead her case before the Senate. His master confirmed this, revealing that the Queen and her Jedi escorts had already arrived on Coruscant. Maul, eager to redeem himself, asked if he should strike them down while they were within reach, but Sidious dismissed the idea as he had other plans for them. Still consumed with shame over allowing Jin to escape, Maul retreated to his quarters, repeating the Jedi's name over and over in his mind. Unlike his usual targets, whose names meant little to him, Qui-Gon Jinn had earned a place in his thoughts. Maul let his hatred fester, using it to deepen his connection to the dark side. Hours later, Sidious summoned Maul back to the strategy room, where he had just returned from the Senate. The Sith Master, barely concealing his pleasure, informed Maul that Queen Amidala had failed to rally the Senate to act against the Trade Federation. With Chancellor Valorum's authority crumbling under political pressure, Naboo was now left defenseless. Sidious then revealed his next move. Amidala, realizing that the Senate would not help her, would return to Naboo alongside the Jedi in due time. To further cement the Federation's control, Sidious ordered Gunray to execute the Queen upon her arrival. When Gunray confirmed that Naboo was fully under the Federation's grip, Sidious was pleased and assured him that he would keep the Senate paralyzed. As he ended the transmission, he turned to Maul with a final order. He was to personally oversee the Federation's occupation of Naboo and ensure that the Queen, along with the Jedi, were to be eliminated. Boarding the Scimitar, Maul departed for Naboo. As the ship moved through hyperspace, he reflected on his mistakes on Tatooine, considering what he could have done differently. Upon reaching Naboo, he observed that the once massive Trade Federation blockade had been reduced to a single Lucrehulk-class control ship. The Neimoidians, obsessed with restoring their commercial operations, had withdrawn most of their fleet. Upon arriving at the palace, Maul assumed command over the Federation's occupation forces, his presence alone enough to instill terror in the Neimoidians. He listened as Gunray rattled off a list of failures like that Resistance forces had disrupted their supply lines, freed prisoners, and even destroyed a Federation mining camp. Maul had little patience for the excuses. The time had come to crush the last remnants of Naboo's resistance. Maul swiftly destroyed Naboo's resistant forces, including a raid on a Gungan village. On Sidious's orders, Maul also tracked down the Forcer Naboo security chief who knew about Palpatine's involvement with Plagueis, ensuring that all loose ends were eliminated. Maul did as ordered and swiftly brought the city back under the Trade Federation's control. Shortly after, Maul received word that Queen Amidala and the Jedi had returned as foreseen. As the Queen and her forces launched their counterattack, Maul intercepted the Jedi in Theed's central hangar. His moment had finally come. Activating both blades of his lightsaber, he prepared to face Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi in a duel that would determine the fate of Naboo and prove his worth as a Sith. The duel began with a flurry of strikes as Maul engaged both Jedi simultaneously. He relished the challenge of facing two opponents, but he quickly realized that Jinn's age slowed him just as he had noticed in their first duel, while Kenobi, though fast, lacked the experience of his master. He controlled the battle, using the environment to his advantage, steering the Jedi onto the high catwalks of Theed's power generator complex. With calculated footwork and strikes, Maul separated Kenobi from Jinn, leaving him with just Jinn as an opponent. The duel led them to a long hallway of energy barriers where the security doors activated, temporarily separating the combatants. As they waited for the barriers to deactivate, Maul prowled back and forth like a caged predator, his gaze locked on Jinn. The moment the barrier dropped, Maul lunged at Jinn with a renewed ferocity, forcing him back toward the edge of the central reactor shaft. Jinn fought valiantly, but was at a disadvantage in the confined space. Maul feigned an opening, baiting Jinn into overcommitting, then struck. Spinning his saber staff, he landed a crushing blow with the hilt to Jinn's chin, stunning him. Without hesitation, Maul plunged his blade into Jinn's torso. Kenobi, trapped behind the final barrier, cried out in anguish as he watched his master fall. Maul deactivated his lightsaber and turned, waiting for the last door to release his next opponent. As soon as the barrier dropped, Kenobi attacked in a blind rage, his strikes fast and powerful, momentarily driving Maul back. The young Jedi's aggression surprised him, and Kenobi even managed to sever Maul's weapon in half. But Maul quickly adjusted. With a forced push, he sent Kenobi tumbling into the reactor shaft. The Jedi barely managed to grab onto a nozzle hanging over the abyss and his doom. Maul paced above, savoring his victory. With a sneer, he kicked Kenobi's lightsaber into the pit, watching it disappear. Kenobi was defenseless. The fight was over. As Maul struck the rim of the reactor shaft with his lightsaber, he sent a cascade of sparks down toward Obi-Wan Kenobi, relishing for the moment he could watch the Jedi fall to his doom. Kenobi, however, did not panic. Instead, he reached out to the Force, calming himself and searching for an opportunity. He remembered that Qui-Gon Jinn's lightsaber still lay near his fallen master, something Maul, in his arrogance and overconfidence, had overlooked. In an instant, Kenobi acted. Using the Force, he propelled himself out of the pit, summoning Jinn's weapon mid-air. Maul barely had time to whirl around in shock before the Jedi delivered a lightning-fast horizontal slash, slicing the Sith in half. Maul's eyes widened in disbelief, his body flinching as pain seared through him. He fell backward into the shaft, his two halves separating. For a brief moment, Maul's mind reeled in disbelief. He had won. He had won! And yet, in an instant, it had all been undone. As this severed body fell into the reactor shaft, he felt only one thing: rage. Chapter 4. Revenge is the only ally. Maul had underestimated the Jedi's resilience, allowing his arrogance and thirst for vengeance to blind him. Instead of focusing on preventing the starships from destroying the droid control ship or ensuring the Queen's death, he had fixated solely on eliminating the Jedi. His impatience and vanity had ultimately cost him everything. Yet, against all odds, Maul survived. As his body plummeted into darkness, his sheer will to live took hold. Fueled by seething hatred and an unyielding drive for vengeance, using everything Sidious had taught him, he reached out with the Force, grasping at anything to break his fall. He managed to catch onto an air vent, slowing his descent before plunging into the waters at the bottom of the shaft. Though his lower body was severed, his mind burned with one thought: Kenobi. Meanwhile, Sidious moved forward with the grand plan. Though Maul's defeat was a setback, even tarnishing his victory over his own master, Darth Plagueis, it was not a disaster. Within a year, he had found a replacement. Count Dooku, the former Jedi Master of Qui-Gon Jinn, was seduced to the dark side and took the title of Darth Tyrannus. Unlike Maul, Dooku was not only a formidable duelist, but also a skilled politician, making him the perfect instrument to ignite the Clone Wars. Eventually, Maul's unconscious, mutilated form was discarded into a waste container and transported to Lotho Minor, a junkyard world filled with refuse and mechanical debris. When he awoke, his body was broken, but his rage was intact. Screaming in fury, he activated his lightsaber and carved his way out of the container. Weak and delirious, he dragged himself through the wasteland. His suffering was interrupted by a distant scream. Turning his head, he spotted an anaconda named Morley fleeing from a massive fire-spewing machine. Summoning the last of his strength, Maul hurled his lightsaber with the Force, striking the machine's head and bringing it crashing down. As the fire extinguished, Maul collapsed into the unconsciousness once more. Recognizing an opportunity, Morley dragged Maul into the depths of Lotho Minor. Awakening in a cave, Maul was once again consumed by rage. His mind, shattered by the torment, clung only to one memory: Obi-Wan Kenobi. His hatred was all that kept him alive. With the Force, he fashioned crude spider-like cybernetic legs from the scrap around him, giving himself a grotesque new form. For 12 long years, he survived in near solitude, feeding on small creatures and insects, with only Morley aiding him in finding shelter and food. His memories were fragmented, his identity lost. But one name kept reappearing in his mind: Kenobi. Chapter 5. Return of the Lost Son. In the greater galaxy, the Clone Wars had erupted. Sidious's plan had been set into motion, and he was just going as he had planned. Maul, though, wasn't aware of any of it happening, biding his time in a meaningless existence on Lotho Minor. Mother Talzin, leader of the Night Sisters, was the only one who knew that Darth Maul had survived and was in exile somewhere in the Outer Rim. After she was unwillingly getting drawn into the war by Dooku and Sidious, as well as her disapproval of their treatment of Ventress, Talzin created Savage as an apprentice to Dooku to assassinate him. After Savage and Ventress failed in their attempt to kill Dooku, she gave Savage a talisman infused with Maul's blood to help him locate the lost Sith, assuming the time had come for him to return from his exile. Savage tracked Maul to Lotho Minor and encountered Morley. Morley, assuming Savage to be yet another prey, lured him into Maul's lair, where the deranged Sith attacked him. Savage quickly overpowered the maddened Maul, though, who at this point had no semblance of sanity left. Presenting Maul with Talzin's talisman, Opress helped him reclaim some of his lost memories before bringing him back to Dathomir. There, Talzin used her dark magic to restore his mind and reshape his spider-like cybernetic legs into a more humanoid form. By the time Maul fully regained consciousness, Talzin had vanished. Feeling the Force out of balance, Maul learned from Opress that the Clone Wars had begun, and he was furious that such a grand conflict had started without him. Recounting his past to his brother, he revealed his deep hatred for Obi-Wan Kenobi. With renewed purpose, Maul accepted the severed half of his old Sith lightsaber that Savage had recovered on Lotho Minor and declared that they would begin their revenge. Chapter 6: A Quest for Revenge. Seeking to draw Kenobi out, Maul and Savage traveled to the planet Raydonia, where they massacred an entire village, broadcasting a transmission to the Jedi Council. He demanded Kenobi face him, knowing the Jedi Master would not ignore the call. Despite the Jedi Council's concerns, Kenobi went alone to confront his old enemy. Awaiting him in the burning ruins of the village, Maul stepped forward, revealing himself to Kenobi. Together, the two brothers easily overpowered Kenobi and knocked him unconscious. Maul, however, did not intend to kill Kenobi quickly. He wanted him to suffer just like he had suffered for all these years on Lotho Minor. As he mocked his prisoner, he expressed disappointment that Kenobi had risen to the rank of Jedi Master, despite, in Maul's eyes, being weak as ever. Before he could continue his torment, an unexpected arrival changed everything. Asajj Ventress, who wanted to settle the score with Savage as well as getting the bounty on him, freed Kenobi. A fierce lightsaber duel erupted inside a cramped cargo hold, resulting in Kenobi and Ventress escaping in an escape pod, leaving the brothers behind. Rather than rage over their escape, Maul remained composed, knowing he had waited years for revenge. He could afford to wait a little longer. Following their skirmish with Kenobi and Ventress, Maul and Opress set out on their bigger goal, building an empire for themselves to enact their revenge on all of Maul's enemies who had betrayed him, including Sidious. They traveled to Yellowblade's Landing and attempted to recruit mercenaries. However, the local gang rejected them, leading the brothers to slaughter the entire gang. Continuing on their mission of building their own army, they were soon intercepted by a Jedi strike team of 5 Jedis led by Obi-Wan Kenobi and Plo Koon. The brothers managed to separate the Jedi though, killing all but Kenobi and Plo Koon before escaping. Later, on the mining world of Morjon, the brothers' growing reputation earned them a bounty, making them extremely wanted in the galaxy. Unconcerned by that though, they raided an intergalactic banking clan space station in the Cyblock system, destroying the station's droid security and stealing vast sums of credits. After having secured the credits, Maul wanted to make sure to establish himself as the dominant Sith amongst the two brothers. From here on out, he would be the master and Savage the apprentice. Now that they had the credits, they went to Florum, where they sought to recruit Weequay pirates under Hondo Ohnaka. Some pirates joined them willingly, but others, including the pirate Captain Hondo, resisted. However, their conquest was interrupted when Obi-Wan Kenobi and Adi Gallia tracked them down yet again. Another fight ensued, this time leading to Galla's death at the hands of Savage. Maul continued his duel with Kenobi inside Ohnaka's base, but when Opress lost his arm in the fight to Kenobi, Maul recognized that need for strategic retreat. They attempted to escape, only to be betrayed by the pirates that had originally promised them their allegiance. Desperate to get away, the brothers make a run for their ship. During the escape, Maul got one of his cybernetic legs blasted, and their ship, along with all their credits, was shot down. They managed to escape in an escape pod, but Maul's plan had failed, and they were worse off than ever before. Chapter 7: The Shadow Collective. After escaping Florum, Maul and Savage Opress found themselves adrift in an escape pod, slowly losing consciousness from lack of oxygen. Their lifeless bodies drifted through the void until they were discovered by an advanced force of Mandalorians led by Pre Vizsla, leader of the Death Watch. Seeing Maul's Sith lightsaber, Vizsla chose to spare them, declaring that any enemy of the Jedi was an ally of Death Watch. The Mandalorians took the unconscious brothers back to their base on Zanbar. On Zanbar, medical droids tended to Maul's injuries, replacing the legs he had received from Mother Talzin with a new pair of humanoid mechanical limbs, as well as replacing Savage's arm with a mechanical one. When Maul awoke, he was greeted by Vizsla and Bo-Katan. Maul revealed that they were Sith Lords and seek revenge against the Jedi, particularly Obi-Wan Kenobi. Intrigued, Vizsla ordered their recovery to continue. Later, Maul met with Vizsla, drinking Cassius tea in his shelter. As they talked, Vizsla revealed that he wanted Mandalore to return to its ancient warrior tradition, which had been exiled by the pacifistic New Mandalorians under Duchess Satine Kryze. After the very Jedi responsible for their defeat was none other than Kenobi, realizing they shared a common enemy, Maul proposed an alliance to eliminate their enemies together, claiming it was the will of the Force. With Death Watch at his side, Maul convinced Vizsla that they needed an army. Their first target was Black Sun, the powerful criminal syndicate. Maul remembered how he had once sowed chaos within Black Sun years ago, and he intended to do so again. Upon meeting the Black Sun ruling council, Maul proposed an alliance. The Black Sun leaders mocked his offer, refusing outright. Savage responded by cutting them all down without hesitation. Only one council member, Zeton Maj, survived, and seeing Maul's strength, pledged Black Sun's loyalty. Next, they traveled to Nal Hutta, demanding the allegiance of the Hutt cartel. When the Hutt ruling council refused and sent bounty hunters to attack them, Maul and his forces defeated the bounty hunters and forced the Hutts into submission as well. Returning to Zanbar, the Pike Syndicate, another powerful criminal syndicate, willingly joined their alliance, seeing the profits that lay in it. With these three factions, Maul's criminal empire, which they named the Shadow Collective, was born. Chapter 8: Conqueror of Mandalore. With a vast underworld army at his disposal, Maul laid out his strategy to Vizsla to take over Mandalore. Their forces would launch coordinated attacks on the new Mandalorian capital, Sundari, creating chaos and making Duchess Satine appear weak. Then, Death Watch would swoop in, capture the criminals, and present themselves as heroes, earning the people's support. The attack unfolded as planned. The crime syndicates ran rampant across Sundari, destabilizing the government. Death Watch, arriving in the wake of the destruction, crushed the criminals and brought them supposedly to justice. Death Watch's popularity rose in turn, making the Mandalorian people demand them to take over the government. The plan they set out worked perfectly. Duchess Satine was voted down due to her inability to deal with the criminals, and Vizsla used thunderous applause and support, declared himself the new ruler of Mandalore. Now that Vizsla had achieved his ultimate goal, he betrayed Maul, putting both him and Savage in prison, seeing that they were a danger to his rule. Maul, though, wasn't too worried about the betrayal, as he had never planned to rule alongside Vizsla anyway. Mandalore was for him to rule from the start. Imprisoned in Sundari's royal prison, Maul thought that there would certainly be a politician in there that they could use as a puppet ruler to present to the public, while he himself would rule behind the scenes. Savage and Maul break out and select the imprisoned former Prime Minister Almec as their puppet. Next up, they had to remove Vizsla. Returning to the throne room, Maul challenged Vizsla to an honorable duel in the Mandalorian tradition. A 1 versus 1 duel to the death, where the winner would claim the loyalty of Death Watch. Vizsla accepted and a duel ensued. Although Vizsla lacked the Force, he was an elite warrior, wielding both the Darksaber and taking advantage of his Mandalorian armory and jetpack, pushing Maul back at first. However, Maul's sheer ferocity proved superior in the end. After a brutal duel, Maul disarmed Vizsla and beheaded him in front of his warriors, seizing the Darksaber as his prize and claiming the throne of Mandalore. Maul's victory left the Death Watch divided. Bo-Katan and her Night Owls refused to follow an outsider, branding Maul's rule illegitimate, while other Mandalorians swore allegiance to their new Sith ruler. Maul didn't care though, he had won. After several setbacks, he had made it to the top and was now the ruler of Mandalore. Chapter 9: Vengeance on Kenobi. Shortly after his coup, Maul learned from Almec that Satine had attempted to escape, transmitting a distress call to the Jedi. Knowing of Satine's past relationship with Kenobi, Maul saw the perfect opportunity for vengeance on his hated adversary. He predicted that, unable to get to the Jedi Council support due to Mandalore's neutrality, Kenobi would come alone. As predicted, Kenobi infiltrated the palace and freed Satine, but Maul and Savage intercepted them as they attempted to escape and captured them both. Maul went on to bring them in front of the throne room and taunted Kenobi, urging him to embrace his rage. Kenobi refused though, declaring the dark side was only for the weak. Maul, furious, reminded him of the suffering he endured and promised to make Kenobi share his pain. He then activated the Darksaber and impaled Satine, forcing Kenobi to watch the love of his life die in his arms. Satisfied with his revenge, Maul smiled in content and had Kenobi thrown into the dungeon to rot in his despair. After all these years, his vengeance had come at last. his greatest rival, broken in his eyes and at his mercy, rotting away in prison, and when the time came, he would kill him. Joyful over the thoughts, he ignored the wider implications of his actions. A Mandalorian civil war had broken out, and the supporters under the leadership of Bo-Katan Kryze started a rebellion against Maul. Kenobi also was able to escape with their help, promising the Mandalorians help if he could provide it at a future point. Maul, at first furious at Kenobi's escape, was able to consolidate himself with the fact that he had deprived Kenobi of his lover and made him suffer. With that, he looked forward to his greater goal: vengeance on the galaxy, vengeance on his old master, Sidious. Chapter 10: Return of the Master. As civil war erupted on Mandalore between Maul's forces and Bo-Katan's rebels, Sidious watched the events unfold in worry. At first unconcerned of Maul's attempts, his growing power had become a potential liability to him. Hence, Sidious deemed him a rival worthy of taking down and traveled to Mandalore to eliminate him personally. Maul immediately sensed his former master's presence on Mandalore, horrified by the dark power approaching. When Sidious arrived at the throne room, Maul knelt, telling Sidious that he had always intended to rejoin his old master. But Sidious saw through the deception and wasn't interested in taking Maul back as an apprentice anyway. A duel ensued between Sidious and the two brothers. Despite fighting together, Maul and Savage were completely outmatched by Sidious's speed and overwhelming power. After separating the brothers, he easily dodged Savage's strikes before impaling Savage with both lightsabers. As Savage died, Maul cradled his brother, who lamented that he was never meant to be a Sith. Sidious only laughed, reminding Maul that he had been replaced. Filled with rage at his brother's death, Maul channeled the dark side and struck back with everything he had. For a brief moment, he seemed to hold his ground, but Sidious soon overpowered him, disarming him and ragdolling him across the room with the Force. Broken and beaten, Maul begged for mercy. Everything he had built over the last year had been destroyed in an instant by his former master. Sidious only smiled at his whimpering former apprentice, declaring that he had other uses for him before electrocuting Maul with barrages of Force lightning. Chapter 11: Final Stand against Sidious. After their duel on Mandalore, Sidious captured Maul and transported him to a remote prison on Stygian. However, Maul's loyal Death Watch forces, acting on Almac's orders, pursued Sidious's vessel, determined to rescue their leader. 2 Death Watch warriors infiltrated the prison and rescued Maul. Unbeknownst to them, though, their escape had been part of Sidious's plan all along. Sidious planned to use Maul as bait to lure Mother Talzin into the open, as he saw her as the last remaining threat to his rule. Regrouping on Zanbar, Maul re-established command over his forces. Reclaiming his Darksaber, Maul assured the Mandalorians that the war they had longed for was finally at hand. Shortly afterward, General Grievous and a Separatist fleet arrived, launching an all-out assault to destroy Maul's allies. Both sides suffered heavy casualties as Maul and his warriors fought fiercely against the droid army. Destroying 4 of Grievous's Magna Guards, Maul confronted the Cyborg general directly, engaging in a duel. Though Maul held up well during the fight, Grievous ultimately kicked him back. Recognizing that he couldn't defeat Grievous here and that his forces had been decimated, Maul ordered a retreat. Rather than pursuing, Grievous allowed him to escape, knowing that Maul would inevitably seek out Mother Talzin for aid, as Dooku and Sidious had predicted. As expected, Maul reached out to Mother Talzin through the Force, calling for her guidance. She appeared before him in a swirling cloud of smoke and listened as he recounted his imprisonment and the loss of Zanzibar. Understanding that Sidious was attempting to lure her into a trap, Talzin instructed Maul to regroup on Ord Mantell, where Black Sun maintained a base of operations. Instead of confronting the Sith directly, she planned to turn their strategy against them, drawing Dooku and Grievous into a trap. Upon arriving at Ord Mantell, Maul assembled his Shadow Collective leaders. He revealed their plan to lure the Separatists into a battle, eliminating Dooku and Grievous once and for all. As preparations began, a team of Night Brothers arrived from Dathomir, sent by Mother Talzin to reinforce the army. Meanwhile, the Separatist fleet arrived in orbit and began bombarding the surface. With no time to waste, Maul ordered the attack to begin. His Death Watch forces launched Mandalorian warships into space, engaging the Separatist fleet in battle. Above Ord Mantell, Maul's fleet targeted General Grievous's command ship. After a relentless assault, his warriors secured a boarding point, allowing Maul and his Mandalorians to storm the ship. Fighting his way to the bridge, he eliminated all battle droids defending the general before beating Grievous in their rematch. With a blade to his throat, Maul gave him a choice: deactivate the droid army, or die. Grievous grudgingly complied and was taken prisoner. Meanwhile, on the surface, Dooku was engaged in battle with the Knight brothers. Though he managed to slay many of them, he was eventually captured and the disabled battle droids were wiped out. Maul had won and reached out to Mother Talzin to inform her of their success. She assured him that with Dooku and Grievous captured, Sidious himself would be next. As the Shadow Collective cleared all traces of their presence from Ord Mantell, they made their way to a Mandalorian supply outpost hidden within an asteroid field. From there, Maul sent a transmission to Darth Sidious, announcing the capture of Dooku and Grievous. Unfazed, Sidious coldly instructed him to kill them, but Maul had other plans. While Grievous was locked away, Maul attempted to persuade Dooku to join him. He argued that both had been betrayed by Sidious and that together they could overthrow him. Dooku remained skeptical, but seemingly went along. Their conversation was interrupted when suddenly a Republic task force led by Obi-Wan Kenobi launched an assault after having tracked the Shadow Collective. Seeing no alternative, Dooku feigned allegiance to Maul, fighting alongside him against the Jedi while Grievous took advantage of the chaos to escape. Seeing the fight against the Jedi as futile, Maul and Dooku also escape in the chaos, making course for Dathomir. Upon arrival on Dathomir, Maul told Dooku that he was aware that Dooku intended to betray him, but that he had planned for that. Dooku was brought before Mother Talzin, who materialized from the ether and began draining his life force. This ritual would allow her to fully regain her physical form, using Dooku as the sacrifice. Before the ritual could be completed, an explosion tore through the chamber, announcing the arrival of Sidious and Grievous. Sidious declared that he had come to end the game once and for all. A battle erupted in which Maul dueled Grievous for the third time, and Talzin, now possessing Dooku's body, fought Sidious. However, Sidious's power was overwhelming, forcing Talzin to release Dooku and manifest in her own physical form. Maul attempted to aid her, but Sidious unleashed a barrage of Force lightning, overpowering the Night Sister. Realizing the battle was lost, Talzin ordered Maul to flee. Though he pleaded with her to take his strength and fight on, she refused, using her last bit of magic to hurl him to safety. Dragged away by his Death Watch warriors, Maul could only watch as Grievous slowly walked up to Talzin and struck the final blow, impaling Talzin with his lightsabers and ending her life for good. Dathomir has fallen. Though Maul had escaped with his life, Sidious no longer saw him as a threat. Darth Maul, deemed a rising power in the galaxy, had been reduced to a fugitive. Chapter 12: Siege of Mandalore. Maul and his loyal forces eventually returned to Mandalore. However, this time around, Maul was broken. Every connection he had, his brother, his great mother, were all destroyed, and he was powerless to help either of them. He saw the futility of going against his former master, deeming him far too strong to ever match, despite having a glaring hatred for him. Maul went on to focus on his rule of Mandalore and the criminal organizations. During this period, Maul also established ties with the criminal organization Crimson Dawn, led by Dryden Voss. Sometime later, through a Force vision, he foresaw Anakin Skywalker as the key to Darth Sidious's ultimate plan. Seeing that he couldn't harm Sidious directly, he instead sought to eliminate Anakin to deprive his former master of a powerful apprentice, getting his revenge in that form. To lure both Anakin and Kenobi back to Mandalore, Maul orchestrated a battle yet again on Mandalore, but instead of Kenobi, Ahsoka Tano and the Republic's clone army arrived to end his rule. Maul's forces ambushed the Republic troops in the Undercity, but when he finally confronted his opponent, he was disappointed to see Ahsoka instead of Kenobi. Forced to retreat, he captured ARC Trooper Jesse and used the Force to extract information about Ahsoka's past. Sensing a shift in the galaxy's order, he warned his Shadow Collective leaders to go into hiding and sent Gar Saxon to assassinate the captive Almec before he could reveal any intelligence to the Republic. Later, Maul met Ahsoka in the throne room. There, he offered her an alliance, claiming that Sidious was unstoppable and that only by working together could they stand a chance. Ahsoka hesitated but demanded to know what Maul wanted with Anakin. Maul revealed that he had seen Skywalker's destiny, to become Sidious's next Sith apprentice and bring about galactic destruction. Unable to accept this, Ahsoka rejected Maul's offer, igniting her lightsabers. Despite Maul's experience, Ahsoka held her own in the ensuing duel. During their fight, Maul gained the upper hand shortly in a saber lock, but Ahsoka caught him off guard with a kick that sent him crashing through a window. Outside, Maul decided to escape on an awaiting ship, seeing the futility of recruiting Ahsoka to his side, deeming his plan failed. Ahsoka, however, remained relentless and pursued him across the rooftops. Ahsoka caught up to Maul near his escape point, and their duel resumed. He disarmed her, cutting through the beam she stood on and cornering her, offering her one last chance to join him. She refused, and in frustration, he struck out, but she evaded him, seized his lightsaber, and tripped him off the platform. As he fell, Ahsoka caught him with the Force. Maul, unwilling to be captured, begged her to let him die, having nothing really left to live for, warning that they were all doomed from what was to come. Ahsoka, though, refused and had him stunned and imprisoned in a Force-resistant Mandalorian vault aboard the Tribunal, a Venator-class Star Destroyer, with orders to deliver him to Coruscant. On their way to Coruscant, Sidious enacted Order 66, turning the clone troopers against the Jedi. Sensing the disturbance, Maul was moments from execution by 2 clones under Sidious's orders when Ahsoka intervened, knocking them unconscious. She freed Maul to create chaos, hoping to give herself a better chance of survival, having a second target running rampant on the Venator. Though unarmed, Maul used the Force to tear through the ship's corridors, slaughtering every clone in his path. He stormed the hyperdrive room, disabling the engines, sending the Venator crashing out of hyperspace into a descent toward a nearby moon. As the ship crumbled, Maul made his way to the hangar and, after one last hustle with Ahsoka, stole a shuttle and escaped to hyperspace. Chapter 13. A Broken Soul. Maul had long foreseen the rise of Darth Vader, Sidious's new apprentice. As the former Anakin Skywalker fell to the dark side, the Sith Order achieved its final victory. With the Galactic Empire replacing the Republic and the Jedi nearly wiped out in the Great Purge, Vader, along with the Inquisitors, was tasked with hunting down any Jedi who remained. Among their targets was Maul himself, though they were never able to find him. He became a ghost in the underworld, whispered about in hushed tones, referred to by the Empire's hunters as the Shadow. Over time, Maul acquired a new double-bladed lightsaber after defeating one of the Empire's Inquisitors. After the fall of the Shadow Collective, Maul was able to take command of Crimson Dawn and wielded control over all 5 crime syndicates, preventing them from fighting one another. While some within the syndicates resented his rule, the immense wealth he generated kept most of them in line, and he eliminated anyone who challenged him. During this time, Maul learned of an ancient Sith holocron, often traveling in secrecy in order to find it, still being determined to find some way to get his revenge on Sidious. Meanwhile, Dryden Voss, his trusted lieutenant, continued to act as the public face of Crimson Dawn. Maul scoured the galaxy's Sith ruins, searching for lost knowledge and power, to gain some upper hand on his enemies. One such journey led him to Damanos, an eerie world of ash and stone, where he discovered a forgotten Sith castle. Maul broke through the walls, but within its halls was encountered with disturbing visions. A specter appeared before him. It was his brother, Savage Opress. Yet the warrior Maul faced was not truly his brother, but an illusion that rejected him outright. They clashed in a furious duel, with Savage mocking Maul's desire for vengeance, suggesting that beneath his rage, all he truly feared was being powerless. Maul, seething with fury, overpowered his opponent and drove his lightsaber through him, watching as the false Savage collapsed lifelessly. Moving deeper into the castle, Maul was confronted by another figure, General Grievous. The cyborg emerged from the shadows, attacking with the ferocity of his past enemy. Grievous taunted him, recalling the moment he had killed Maul's mother, reveling in the pain it had caused and how little power Maul had to stop him. The words cut deep, reigniting Maul's anger. He fought with relentless aggression, dismantling Grievous piece by piece. Yet the illusion of Grievous did not falter. He laughed, tormenting Maul with the knowledge that Kenobi had stolen his revenge by killing the real Grievous first. Even as Maul struck him down, there was no satisfaction, no relief, only emptiness. His rage had driven him forward for years, but even when he claimed victory, it brought him nothing. At the heart of the temple, Maul was confronted by a final specter, Qui-Gon Jinn. Unlike the others, Qui-Gon did not attack. Instead, he simply asked the question, why? What was the true purpose of Maul's endless quest for revenge? What would he do once Sidious and Obi-Wan were dead? Maul had no answer. He had never considered a future beyond vengeance. Sensing this, Qui-Gon offered him another path, a chance to leave the temple, to abandon his fruitless pursuit of destruction, and to discover who he could be without the weight of his past chaining him down. But Maul refused. He dismissed the Jedi's words, clinging stubbornly to his hatred. Qui-Gon warned him that this path could only lead to one place, a fate Maul already knew. Enraged, Maul lashed out, cutting down the Spectre, but Qui-Gon merely faded away. With his departure, so too did the dark energy that had drawn Maul to the temple. There was no great power, no secret weapon, only nothing. Furious, Maul stormed back to his ship, determined to continue his search for something, anything that could finally grant him the power to destroy his enemies. In doing so, he unknowingly failed the lesson the temple had tried to teach him, and proved every Spectre right. He was a broken soul driven only by his hatred and thirst for revenge. Chapter 14. A New Hope Emerges. Maul's quest for the Sith holocron ultimately led him to Malachor, where he sought a powerful weapon hidden within an ancient Sith temple. However, his attempts to enter the temple proved futile, and he found himself trapped on the desolate world after his ship was wrecked. With no means of escape, Maul was left alone, stuck on the planet for years. His isolation came to an end when an Inquisitor, the eighth brother, arrived on Malachor searching for him. Around the same time, Maul encountered a young Jedi apprentice, Ezra Bridger, who had come to the temple in search of knowledge. Sensing Ezra's potential, he began to manipulate the boy, encouraging him to tap into his emotions, his anger and fear to unlock the secrets of the Sith temple. Together, Maul and Ezra overcame a series of challenges, retrieving the Sith holocron, deepening their bond. When they reached the temple summit, they encouraged Jedi Knight Kanan Jarrus and Ahsoka Tano, who were battling 3 Inquisitors. Ahsoka, immediately recognizing Maul, was wary of him but begrudgingly agreed to a temporary alliance after he helped them push back the Inquisitors. Knowing of Vader's imminent arrival, the uneasy alliance separated to get to the top of the temple in order to place the holocron into it. As they scaled the temple, Maul continued to groom Ezra as his apprentice, testing him further when they encountered the Seventh Sister. Maul easily subdued the Inquisitor, holding her in a force choke and urged Ezra to kill her. When the boy hesitated, Maul struck her down himself, chastising Ezra for his weakness. The two continued onward as Maul subtly tightened his hold over the young Jedi. Upon sensing Vader's arrival, Maul chose not to reveal his presence to Ezra, focusing instead on dealing with the remaining Inquisitors. With Ahsoka's help, Maul killed the 5th brother, and the 8th brother plummeted to his death. With the Inquisitors eliminated, Maul made his move. He turned on Kanan, striking him down and blinding him with a vicious strike. Declaring that the Sith holocron would activate a powerful ancient weapon, Maul revealed his true intentions to the Jedi, to claim the temple's power and take Ezra as his apprentice. As he dueled Ahsoka, Kanan, despite his injury, regained his focus. Telling Ahsoka to meet Ezra at the top of the temple, a blinded Kanan prepared himself to face Maul, using the Force to sense his opponent's movements. Maul mocked him, but underestimated Kanan massively. As Maul struck out at Kanan, Kanan countered swiftly, catching Maul off guard and sending him tumbling off the temple. Though he survived the fall, Maul's plans were shattered. With Vader's arrival, there was no chance of him getting the holocron back anymore. He fled Malachor aboard a stolen Inquisitor's TIE fighter, seething with frustration. Though his attempt to claim ultimate power had failed, he remained fixated on Ezra, recognizing the boy's potential and determined to continue his influence over him. Chapter 15. Old Enemies Not Forgotten. Months later, Maul resurfaced, pursuing the rebels once again. He ambushed a transport, interrogating its crew to learn the whereabouts of Ezra Bridger and his allies. When he discovered the location of the rebel ship, the Ghost, Maul, took its crew hostage. In exchange for their lives, he demanded the Sith holocron and a Jedi holocron, knowing that their combined power could unlock great secrets. At their rendezvous point, Maul lured Kanan into an airlock and ejected him into space, believing him dead. With Kanan seemingly gone, Maul shifted his focus entirely to Ezra, urging him to merge the Jedi and Sith holocrons to unlock their hidden knowledge. Ezra sought the key to destroying the Sith, while Maul pursued an answer that had eluded him for years. As the holocrons merged, Ezra glimpsed versions of distant worlds and twin suns in a desert sky, but Maul initially saw nothing. Before they could fully unlock the holocron's secrets, Kanan, who had survived, intervened, breaking the connection. Staggering back, Maul muttered in shock, "He lives," realizing that his old enemy, Obi-Wan Kenobi, was still alive. For years, he had lived in the uncertainty whether or not Sidious's Order 66 had deprived him of killing his greatest enemy or not. But after the holocron's vision, Maul was re-energized and more determined than ever to find his old enemy once again. Maul returned to Dathomir, believing the full vision remained trapped within his mind. To retrieve it, he used the dark side to torment Ezra through visions, manipulating him into coming to him. To restore his vision, Maul convinced Ezra to join him in performing an ancient Night Sister ritual. As the ritual unfolded, Maul and Ezra's minds merged again, revealing the truth. Kenobi was on a planet with twin suns and also held the key to the Sith's destruction. After the ritual, Maul made one final attempt to persuade Ezra to join him, arguing that they shared the same destiny. But Ezra refused, choosing his friends over the destruction of the Sith. Disappointed but undeterred, Maul turned away. He had gotten what he needed. With Kenobi's location within his grasp, his obsession reignited. The long hunt was reaching its climax. He would find Obi-Wan Kenobi, and this time he would have his ultimate vengeance. Chapter 16. Peace at Last. Maul made his way to Tatooine. His search for Obi-Wan Kenobi led him deep into the desert, but he soon realized he was lost. Exhausted and overwhelmed by the thought that he might die alone in the sands, he collapsed, screaming Kenobi's name in frustration. Yet, even as despair threatened to consume him, Maul found renewed determination and pressed on. Knowing he could not locate Kenobi on his own, he devised a plan to draw him out. Using the Matrix he had taken from the Sith holocron to reach out to Ezra Bridger. Ezra, misled by the vision Maul had sent him, traveled to Tatooine, believing he had to stop the former Sith Lord from killing Kenobi. After a series of setbacks and through Maul's influence on Ezra's mind through the Force, Ezra ended up stranded in the desert as well, barely clinging to life alongside his droid Chopper. They were then found by Kenobi, who had been tracking them. When Ezra awoke, Kenobi revealed to him that Maul had used him as a pawn, luring him to Tatooine so that he could find Kenobi himself. Just as the Jedi Master finished speaking, Maul arrived. Kenobi sent Ezra and Chopper away, wanting to face Maul himself. As Ezra left, Maul bid his apprentice Ezra farewell, then turned his full attention to Kenobi. He mocked the Jedi's meager existence, suggesting that death might be a mercy compared to the life Kenobi led. Unshaken, Kenobi countered that Maul had defined himself by his obsession with domination and vengeance, leaving him with nothing. Irritated, Maul ignited his lightsaber and slashed at the ground, extinguishing the small fire between them. Then, as realization dawned, he questioned why Kenobi was on Tatooine at all. It could not be merely to hide. He was protecting something. Or someone. With a chilling certainty, Maul understood. Kenobi was guarding the key to destroy the Sith. A child. That was what the vision of the holocron had revealed to him. Recognizing the threat Maul now posed to Luke Skywalker, Kenobi, in reaction, ignited his lightsaber and assumed his Sorasu stance, which he had used so often during the Clone Wars. Maul, in turn, activated both blades of his weapon, and the two locked eyes. Kenobi, realizing that he had risen above the warrior he was in the Clone Wars, shifted into the Ataru stance, the same one his master, Qui-Gon Jinn, had used long ago. Recognizing Qui-Gon's stance, Maul smirked and charged, intending to use the same maneuver that had allowed him to kill Qui-Gon all these years ago. A strike with the hilt of his saber aimed at Kenobi's face. But Kenobi was ready. Anticipating Maul's move, Kenobi countered swiftly, bringing his blade down, in a single decisive strike. His lightsaber sliced through the hilt of Maul's weapon and carved a fatal wound across his chest. Maul staggered, eyes widening in shock as he looked down at the injury. In this moment, he realized he had completely misread Kenobi's situation. He thought that Kenobi was a hopeless rat in the desert, cowardly waiting for someone to come and release him from this pointless existence. Maul didn't anticipate that Kenobi not only wasn't a hopeless Jedi, but actually at the height of his power, far beyond what he had been when they last met in the Clone Wars. Maul then realized that whatever Kenobi was protecting had to be worth so much that Kenobi was willing to put all his hope into it. Maul deactivated his broken lightsabers and dropped to one knee. Before he could fall, Kenobi caught him, gently lowering him to the ground. As Maul lay dying, his rage and hatred faded. In his final moments, he looked up at Kenobi and, with a desperate whisper, asked if the boy he was protecting was the Chosen One, the only being worth all of Kenobi's effort. Seeing Maul's need for closure, Kenobi softly confirmed that he was. With his last breath, Maul accepted his fate, muttering that the boy would avenge them both, him and Kenobi, by destroying Darth Sidious. And then, after years of suffering, rage, and torment, Maul finally passed away, not with anger, but with the peace of knowing that his master's reign would one day end. In a final act of respect, Kenobi gently closed Maul's eyes and laid him to rest. In the eyes of many, Count Dooku was always a villain, the evil Sith Lord who plunged the galaxy into a civil war and eventually caused the rise of the Empire and the fall of the Jedi. But not too many know Dooku was once an honorable man, an idealist who only wanted what was best for the galaxy. Where people saw order and freedom, Dooku saw a kind of corruption he wanted to destroy. His idealism, however, came at the cost of his morals, allowing the dark side to consume and lead him to his eventual downfall. Chapter 1. From Riches to Temple Life. Dooku's story begins in 102 BBY, in the High Republic's fading light. He opened his eyes on Sereno, a world of old forest and named after its former ruling family, the House Sereno. His father was Count Gora, and his mother was Countess Anya. In the present days, their house had ruled for generations, but their son was born with something unforeseen in his blood. The Force had touched the infant. What should have been a blessing became a curse in his father's mind. Gora feared the strange. He feared the whispers that followed Force sensitives. He called them freaks, and he decided his heir would not be one of them. Gora sent word to the Jedi Order, "Come take the child," before carrying the infant to the edge of his own lands and leaving him at the forest line with no name and no clothes. Night pressed close on as spine wolves stalked the shadows. Cold crept into the baby's bones before a Jedi Seeker found him, just as death was on the child's doorstep. That rescuer brought him to Coruscant, where the Grand Temple took him in. The Order gave him a name that already belonged to him. Dooku was to be his new identity. Not too long after Dooku was given a new identity and path, he joined the Jedi Temple's Hawkbat clan, where younglings laughed and sparred together. Dooku, however, was known to not laugh that much. Instead, he preferred to focus on his studies and training. Unlike most unruly kids, he followed the rules set like stepping stones, seeking to be perfect. He compared himself against every other child in the clan, working very hard, having a discipline that was unmatched, as he would get up early in the morning and go to sleep late in the evenings. Master Tera Sinube guided his clan and noticed the boy who wanted to be perfect, but he also saw the cost. Dooku had distanced himself from his peers through his actions. His distance bred tension. One youngling called Arath Terex disliked him especially. Terex was quick with word and mocked Dooku as his excellency, a reference to Dooku's heritage. The others sometimes laughed along because it was easier to laugh than to be pulled into a feud. Dooku tried to ignore the insults. Instead, he put the heat in his chest into his practice drills and training. As he struggled mingling with the other kids, there was one friendship that did come from his time at the clan. Sifo-Dyas was restless and bright and saw the world in ways other kids didn't. Dooku admired that boldness while Sifo-Dyas admired Dooku's discipline. Together, they balanced each other, even often getting into trouble because of their minor misadventures. But in those first years, their bond mostly meant shared training halls and whispered plans to sneak extra study time in the archives. But the past followed Dooku even as he tried to outrun it. Chapter 2. The Bitter Homecoming. In 90 BBY, the Order sent a group to Sereno for a grand festival, with Grandmaster Yoda leading the party. Master Sinube and Eula Braylon came as well. Younglings, including Dooku and Sifo, traveled with them to learn by watching their elders in public. Sereno welcomed the Jedi with a big welcoming ceremony. Meanwhile, Dooku walked the streets of his former home planet. During a demonstration of saber forms, a loud sound cracked through the sky. Two children ran laughing through the smoke and sound as they had set off some thunderburst caps. Dooku saw the kids and thought he knew one of the faces and decided to slip away in pursuit. At the fairground, he caught up to the two young nobles and found them cornered by thugs. Dooku did not hesitate. Using the Force and an electroblade, he drove the thugs back. The children introduced themselves as Jensa and Ramil, and when Dooku told them he was born on Sereno, they offered him a tour through his home planet, which he had never seen before. They moved through the festival together where, for a few hours, Dooku got a taste of the life he could have had if he'd never left this world. Jensa led him to the Great Assembly, where she told him stories about Sereno and how its noble families defeated the Sith Empire. But as Dooku listened to the stories, an ancient carving called to him. It was of Tirataka, an ancient dragon from lore. Jensa warned him to leave it, but he touched it anyway. Suddenly the ground shook as the building trembled and buried them underneath them. They survived, and Dooku tried to lift the wreckage with the Force, but before he could do anything, Master Yoda arrived and moved the debris for them. The Masters cleared the ruin as Count Gora stormed forward when he heard the involvement of a kid named Dooku. He faced Yoda furiously, proclaiming that he never wanted to see his son again. In that moment, a young Jedi learned the history of his own origin. Jinza was his sister, and Ramil was his brother, whereas Gora was his father. Right then and there, he learned he was the cast-off. Back on Coruscant, Dooku asked Yoda for the full truth. The Grand Master told the story of how Gora had called the order and then abandoned the baby on the forest edge. Dooku pictured the wolves in the cold as anger, and fear rose. But instead of letting his emotions get the best of him, he poured them into training. But as he kept himself busy, Dooku obtained a device tuned to a secure channel. It was the only way he and his sister could speak in private without anyone knowing they had been in contact since their fateful encounter on Sereno. But as much as Dooku wanted to experience the same things his sister was allowed to have, he kept his hunger for belonging from his voice, knowing that his fate was tied to the Jedi, and his studies were what kept him from that feeling of want. Chapter 3. First Exposure to the Sith. 2 years had passed since that bitter homecoming, and the archives became Dooku's second home. One day, after yet another lesson, Sifo-Dyas pulled Dooku into a quiet corner and revealed the journal of Clias Pterodine, an expelled Jedi. The pages hinted at a locked trove below the library called the Bogan Collection. Sifo wanted to see it, and although Dooku always adhered to the Jedi rules, the potential to gain more knowledge overrode his will to stick to rules. He let curiosity get the better of him, and the duo made their way to a room where the Order hid artifacts younglings should never see. Inside the archives, they found different dark side artifacts, scrolls, and weapons. A fragment of metal called Dooku towards. Dooku reached for the fragment, and as soon as he did, the Tirataka from Sereno roared in his mind, leading him to panic. Dooku lashed out uncontrollably with the Force, and accidentally threw Sifo-Dyas across the room, which alerted the chief librarian to their presence. They were brought to the infirmary where Sifo-Dyas' wounds were treated. Master Yoda and Master Braylon came by, being very disappointed in the boy's actions. But in the midst of the lecture, another voice joined the room. It was Lena Costana. She worried that younglings even managed to slip into a vault that should have been ironclad. She and the Masters debated what it meant to prepare children for darkness. As that was happening, Dooku listened and memorized every word. Despite Costana's presence, the boys were still punished to decipher the Lothal Papyri, a collection of agricultural treaties. But Sifo found a secret book that Costana slipped into the papyrus. This was the Bestiary of Darth Kaldoff, a Sith work. Dooku wanted him to report it, but Sifo refused. The refusal gnawed at Dooku until worry turned to suspicion. He confronted Costana on the contemplation balcony, demanding an answer. He wondered whether or not she was secretly Sith, but Costana answered that this was simply a test. Dooku, however, sensed anger and frustration within Costana, allowing him to actually believe he was confronting a Sith Lord. The two engaged in a short duel where Costana spoke about Darth Sakya and the curved hilt the Sith used, similar to Dooku's own lightsaber hilt. She also told him she was aware of Dooku's connection to the Tirataka. Despite Costana's experience, she began to realize how skilled the young Dooku was. The Jedi Initiate broke her defense with a flurry of attacks that became part of his signature fighting style. Yoda, however, arrived in time to break the fight, telling Dooku he had jumped to a conclusion. At the same time, the Grand Master also chided Costana for her methods. But something changed after that. Dooku kept seeing Costana when she returned from missions, seeing her as a mentor. He wanted to understand the darkness rather than run from it. It didn't take time for him long to engage himself with her theories about the Sith. Curiosity took over the young Dooku, who continued to incorporate his studies into his philosophies and fighting style, eventually becoming a prodigy among the many Jedi Initiates he trained with. Chapter 4. The Grand Master's Apprentice. In 86 BBY, Dooku finished his Initiate trials and set his hopes on Lena Costana, thinking his mentor would choose him as her Padawan. The Padawan tournament arrived, and Dooku met Sifo-Dyas in the ring. He fought with one hand behind his back and a blindfold over his eyes, but still won. The victory did not bring the prize he wanted. Costana chose Sifo-Dyas. Dooku felt the sting of it, yet the hurt faded when none other than Grandmaster Yoda stepped forward and claimed him as his apprentice. A bond grew between student and master. Yoda took Dooku out into the galaxy and let the stars do part of the teaching. They voyaged to Las Bane in the Mid-Rim and walked through forest on Kashyyyk, where the air hummed with life. There, Dooku watched Yoda stand before a giant Terran-Tatic. He saw how calm his master could be, and how Yoda used this discipline and serenity as a shield. But while the master and pupil bonded, Dooku's renegade personality was often a problem Yoda had to endure. Not too long after, Sifo-Dyas saw a vision of a giant solar storm coming for Protobranch. He told the council that Dooku sided with Sifo-Dyas and with Kostana to warn the planet. The council, however, decided to do nothing, believing that not all visions were meant to happen. Yoda agreed with that line, and the door closed in their faces. Despite that, Dooku's defiance opened another door. He, Kostana, and Sifo-Dyas went to Protobranch's Senator Taveti and warned him of the danger. However, the senator seemed rather disinterested, only seeing a danger for the planet's resources rather than their population, so they went to Protobranch with a reluctant Yoda. The storm came as Sifo-Dyas had seen it, killing a big part of the population. Meanwhile, the Jedi barely lived through it. But as Dooku survived, his faith in the Jedi had a first crack. His trust in the Council thinned, along with his respect for the Republic for him. Republic leaders were more concerned with counting resources and profits before counting the dead. That was unforgettable and unforgivable for the young Dooku. By 82 BBY, Dooku was 20 and back on Sereno for his mother's funeral. Anya lay at rest. His father, Gora, met grief with rage and struck him with words and fists. "Freak," Gora said. Despite the pain he felt, Dooku focused on a new mission at hand. He, Sifo-Dyas, and Kostana went on a mission to track down a relic on Asusto, believing they were following a trail of Sith artifacts. But this was a trap, set by the Presagers of Hakote, a ritualistic organization that existed on Hakote. They captured Dooku to use him for a dark side ritual. During that time, Dooku experienced a series of visions of his future, and amidst such darkness, he used Force lightning for the first time to kill his captors, allowing him to step into the world of the dark side against his wishes. Kostana and Sifo-Dyas, however, kept him from plunging deeper into darkness by teaching him a cleansing ritual involving arm wrappings designed to keep him centered in the Force. For now, he was still well in the light. Chapter 5. Master to Qui-Gon Jinn. Between 82 and 78 BBY, Dooku completed his training with Yoda and rose to Jedi Knight. Yoda saw him as one of the greatest Padawan he had ever had in his centuries-old life. Soon thereafter, he became a Jedi Master. Eventually, he set aside his first weapon and forged a curved hilt that fit the line of his wrist. With his specialized lightsaber and fighting style, he soon became one of the best duelists in the galaxy. He soon stood among the finest Jedi of his era, and campaigns across the Republic built him a great reputation. Dooku soon became an instructor for the Thranta clan, teaching them his brand of swordsmanship and discipline. He also became a mentor. Dooku took Rael Averross as his Padawan and trained him for 10 years. Rael went on to reach knighthood under him. During those years, Dooku did not remain within the temple alone. He traveled to Dathomir and rendered aid to Mother Talzin of the Night Sisters in what turned into a long-time partnership. He gave her a lock of his hair in what was an exchange that set a brief accord between different paths. In 68 BBY, Dooku accepted a second student. Qui-Gon Jinn was 12 and newly assigned. On the evening of the assignment, the boy presented himself in Dooku's quarters and tried to look calm. Then Dooku asked if the boy was afraid. Jinn confessed that he was. He said he did not fear Dooku, but feared failing to become a Jedi. He feared that he might not be worthy. Dooku went straight to the root of the fear, which was a future where the young Jinn might fear himself, and a future that might not be the one he wanted. Instead of rejecting Qui-Gon, Dooku surprised him. He called the answer wise, because most Padawans either deny fear or cannot name it. He praised the boy's insight and told him that truth sharpened courage. It didn't take long for Dooku to drill into Qui-Gon the same interest he had for knowledge, artifacts, and prophecies. The young Jinn learned from his master that the Jedi no longer believed in prophets, prophecies, and visions. Despite that, the master and apprentice duo developed a certain kind of fascination for tales of visions and prophecies, eventually helping Qui-Gon's own philosophies and beliefs. Months later, the Council sent them to Shurapak, where a battle burned across the surface. It was Jyn's first war. When they landed, they found Rael Averross among the fighters. Dooku introduced his former student to his new one, and the three spoke like soldiers at a crossroads. Soon, a strike team formed to hunt the Falleen bounty hunter Shinda Maul. During the search, Jyn was seized Shinda and held at gunpoint. Before she could kill the boy, Dooku struck, lightning flashing from his hand. Maul fell, with Jyn telling Rael what had happened. Rael was not shocked, understanding that Dooku was going to do whatever it takes to get the job done with minimal casualties. The next missions were full of pain and politics. Senator Dagonet's son had been abducted, prompting the Council to send Dooku and Jyn to the Senator's home world. There, they found a land stripped by mines and mills. They walked toward a barren village under a haze of smoke. The villagers were silent before learning that the duo were Jedi and not agents of the Senator. They were afraid of their own Senator. A woman then spoke of how their world had been drained of resources and essentially forgotten by their leader. Eventually, they found the Senator's son, bound but unharmed. Dooku asked what he knew of the lives of those who held him. The boy said he did not blame them. A runner arrived and announced that Dagonet had landed with soldiers. The kidnappers accused the Jedi of leading them into a trap. Dooku steadied them and said the Senator did not know of the investigation. Outside, the Senator handed bread to the villager who had betrayed the hiding place. Another villager muttered that many would do the same. Dagonet ordered Dooku and Jyn to take villagers and return his son. Dooku, however, relented, saying that their investigation was not complete. And when the Senator demanded obedience, Dooku said the Jedi serve the people of the Republic and not its leaders. Dooku's defiance led to a firefight where soldiers raised rifles and villagers were forced to fight. Dagonet gave the Jedi one last chance to step aside. As hard as the Jedi tried, they could not halt the rising slaughter. When most of the villagers had fallen, the Senator called a halt. Dooku stood among the citizens of the Republic, killed by their own leader. Rage rose in him with the shape of justice. He reached into the dark and lifted his hand. The Senator's throat tightened, but Jyn shouted for his master to stop. Dooku hurled him backward against the barn door and kept the crushing grip in place. He walked forward through the smoke, with soldiers stumbling out of his path. He stood over the politician and squeezed harder. Jyn saw one thread left. He cut the boy free and brought him into the square. The son rushed to his father and begged Dooku to spare him, with Qui-Gon saying it was over. Dooku released the hold, and the Senator collapsed and, clinging to his breath, stared up in shock. Afterward, the Senator left with his son as the young man promised to work for his people. Dooku, though, doubted that anything would change. Jyn asked whether doubt had driven him, but his master only praised him for saving the lives. He even said his student was a wiser man than himself as they walked back to their ship. Chapter 6. Losing Faith in the Republic. By now, Dooku had become one of the leading names in the entire Order and quite possibly one of the strongest Jedi. The Council trusted him and Jedi Master Mace Windu on a mission to recover the corpse of a fallen Jedi Council member, Jedi Master Katri, who had been killed in an ambush on Raxus Secundus. He was no longer a young man by any means, and he had already served the Jedi Order for decades, but age didn't dull his eyesight toward the injustices and corruption of the Republic. Dooku, however, remained loyal to the Jedi Order until the events of this mission, and throughout his time working with Windu, he had doubts about the circumstances surrounding Katri's death. Senator Larrick had stood with Katri during the ambush and had survived. Dooku questioned how a politician lived while a Jedi Master fell. They landed on Raxus Secundus and met Larrick. He said he had been present when the attack began. Dooku pressed him for a complete account, but the Senator hesitated and shifted details. Windu noticed the same gaps and favored alerting the Council. Still, Dooku insisted on acting at once. At the scene, they examined the circumstances and concluded that multiple attackers had been present, but Larrick's shuttle showed no blaster scars. The contradiction hardened Dooku's doubts, forcing him to demand the truth from the Senator by force. Larrick panicked and admitted that his guards had killed the Jedi Master, and before he could say more, a blaster bolt killed the Senator. The guards and their droids opened fire as Dooku and Windu fought back, beating them quite easily. The last fighter sank to his knees and gave his name as Simic. He confessed to the killing, saying they had learned that Larrick used his Senate seat to enrich himself while Raxus was carved into contracts. They only kept Larrick alive to force him to speak for their reforms at the next Senate session. Windu asked why Semij had not shown Katri the evidence. Semij answered that the Jedi served the Senate in practice and that peace meant order for the wealthy. He saw no ally and envoys who guarded the interest of the powerful. Afterward, Dooku and Windu secured Semij and brought him to a cell. Dooku returned to speak with him in private. He did not excuse murder, but affirmed that a people could defend their world. He urged Semij to keep his movement alive and to evolve rather than wither. With the case closed, Dooku and Windu brought Katri's body to Coruscant. The temple honored her and then committed her to a flame. After the funeral, Dooku asked Windu about the rumor that Windu was to receive Katri's council seat. Windu confirmed the offer. Dooku asked if Windu had known of the offer before they left for Raxus. Windu said he had not. He believed the council preferred him because Dooku had strayed from the mission, and a senator had died. He promised to speak on Dooku's behalf. While Dooku thanked him, he grew wary of Windu's rise in rank. Years later, council member Jor Aerith invited Dooku and his Padawan to represent the Order at the Coruscant Dragonfire Air Rally. The goal was diplomatic goodwill. Dooku and Eula Braylon voiced frustration with the council's pursuit of politics. Aerith said Dooku's presence would help since he had the gift of conversation that she lacked. Dooku agreed and turned the trip into a lesson on Candavent customs for his student. At the rally, he met his older brother Ramil, who flew in the race. Dooku questioned why the heir of Sereno risked his life in sport. Ramil brushed aside the concern and took the start. He flew well until his airspeeder failed and crashed. The wreckage bore the marks of sabotage. Dooku and his apprentice slipped from the stands and followed the trail through service corridors and hangars. An investigator tried to bury the facts and answer to a Genet crime boss named Cinevax. Aerith sent a recall and ordered them back to the event. Dooku ignored the order and seized the criminal. Under questioning, Cinevax revealed knowledge of council communications. Their recall had been logged in exact terms. The leak was inside the temple. Dooku summoned the temple guard and escorted Cinevax to the High Council chamber, where he stated the charge of espionage. Through the Force, he felt guilt settle on Eula Braylon. As Dooku lit his lightsaber, Eula raised hers and asked if he intended to kill her. He stepped back and said he sought justice, then placed her under arrest. Investigators uncovered the leverage that Cinevax held. Unbeknownst to the Council, Aerith Terex was Eula's son. Blackmail had turned a Jedi Master into a tool for criminals. Dooku and Qui-Gon exposed Terex, and he was taken into custody. The Council removed Eula from her seat, opening a vacancy in the Council. Yoda offered the seat to Dooku, who accepted the chance to become a council member in the hopes of changing the Jedi Order from within. Qui-Gon himself eventually passed his trials to become a Jedi Knight. During that time, he took a Padawan named Obi-Wan Kenobi, who grew in skill and became a hero among the Jedi. Throughout that time, Dooku remained in contact with his former apprentice, who also achieved the rank of Master. At some point after Qui-Gon's rise as a true Jedi, Dooku took on another apprentice, but she fell to the dark side and died, becoming an embarrassment to her master. Still, Dooku kept her 2 red-bladed lightsabers. Years later, Dooku realized that transactions had shaped policies in the Republic as credits bent laws. He judged that the Jedi stood too near to the Senate to act freely against such corruption. It didn't take long for the distance between Dooku's conscience and the Jedi Order to grow, but the final nail in his fall was yet to be struck, and the man responsible for such happened to be the very Dark Lord who had the Republic at the palm of his hand. Chapter 7. Rise Count Dooku. Unbeknownst to Dooku and the Jedi Order, careful eyes had been watching him and his growing disillusionment with the system. Dooku's growing discontent with the Republic and its protectors was already within the scope of the secretive Sith's radar, with Darth Plagueis showing interest in him. Even before Dooku decided to take a seat in the High Council, he was already familiar with Higo Damask, a moon industrialist who was secretly Plagueis behind the shadows. This Sith Lord had studied Dooku's conduct with a patient eye and a clear sense of opportunity. Plagueis had watched Dooku since certain events in the Jedi's life revealed a brush with the dark. Dooku was also frustrated with what was happening regarding the politicking and profit-chasing senators and businessmen throughout the galaxy. But what he wasn't aware of was that it was Plagueis and his apprentice Sheev Palpatine who were orchestrating the corrupt and shady dealings that frustrated Dooku. But while Plagueis was still grooming his apprentice, Darth Sidious, he viewed Dooku as a possible insurance policy if ever things were to go wrong with Palpatine's schemes as a rising politician. He also considered turning Dooku indirectly to fracture the Jedi Order. The idea lingered until Plagueis introduced Dooku to Palpatine, at the time Senator of Naboo. The introduction mattered because the rapport that grew between Dooku and Sidious would prove central to the Sith Grand Plan. Senator Palpatine sensed Dooku's disenchantment and had followed him for years. He saw the advantage having an ally with Dooku's reputation and skills. Palpatine may have been in league with Plagueis, but he had his own secret plot. Even before the Battle of Naboo in 32 BBY, he met with Dooku to test opinions and cultivate him as an ally. Dooku still acted within Jedi orthodoxy, yet his doubts widened. He flirted with the belief that the dark side could be used without personal corruption as dissatisfaction with the Order grew. Eventually, after his brother, the Count Ramil, tried to turn Serenno's population against the Republic by hiring mercenaries to forge unrest in the streets, Dooku returned to his home planet yet again, as his sister Jensa pleaded for his help. After killing his brother, he decided that Serenno was in need of him to bring back order. Due to that, Dooku decided to part ways with the Jedi Order. Not as a Dark Initiate or a Sith Lord, he simply decided his ideals were no longer in line with what the Jedi believed in, and that he was needed more on Serenno. He then assumed his place as the rightful heir to Serenno, becoming its count and inheriting his family's enormous fortune. Dooku was 60 at this point, and his departure from the Jedi Order saddened Yoda tremendously. When Dooku wanted to return his lightsaber though, Yoda wanted him to keep it, as he saw being a Jedi as more than a title or the belonging to an order. Dooku thanked his old master one last time for his guidance before parting ways. Soon thereafter, by 40 BBY, he started working in secret with Sidious, who had become a close ally in his quest to reform the Republic, as Palpatine was able to convince him of the Sith's plan to reform the Republic. For Sidious, he started to go on trips to recruit potential allies for the Sith, but he was yet to burn any bridges with the Jedi or fall entirely to the Sith's ideals, for he still adored Qui-Gon Jinn as a beloved former apprentice. It was that connection that kept him from completely falling to the dark side at that point in time. But such a connection had to be severed if the Sith wanted Dooku on their side. Chapter 8: The Fall to the Dark Side. After accepting Sidious's offer, Dooku became the quiet architect of a manufactured war. He used his access to the Jedi Temple to advance the Sith Grand Plan and to conceal each sign that might reveal it. The most important task he directed was the creation of a clone army that the Republic would one day deploy. How the Sith learned of the project remained unclear. Dooku later said that Sifo Dyas had invited his help. Dyas, who once had a vision about planet's downfall, had another vision about the Republic's own demise. He feared the Republic's turmoil and the Council's complacency, eventually ordering the Kaminoans to grow the army as a reserve in case civil war erupted. Unbeknownst to Sifo Dyas, though, he had been deceived by the Sith and was doing their bidding. By 33 BBY, Dooku was in search of more tools for the upcoming war against the Republic. He discovered a Kaleesh warlord named Grievous, once called Kaimayan Jai Shilal. Dooku and Sidious kept an eye on him during the Kaleesh War against the Yamri of Huk. The Yamri were wealthy and technologically advanced. When the Kaleesh forced them back, the insects sought aid from the Galactic Republic. The Republic and the Jedi answered, taking the Yamri's side against the Kaleesh. Embargoes and fines followed, causing starvation to spread across Kaleesh. Grievous's hatred of the Republic and the Jedi hardened. The Kaleesh warrior entered the service of the intergalactic banking clan. As an enforcer, he was phenomenally successful and became one of the clan's most valuable assets and catching the eye of the Sith Lords. They saw a commander who could be reshaped and a subject for experiments that fused technology with a living will. Soon after, Dooku had Grievous's shuttle sabotaged and it fell from the sky. Dooku appeared and kept the Kaleesh alive while going to Geonosis to forge their greatest weapon. He claimed to Grievous that the Jedi were responsible for the sabotage. The charge fixed Grievous's fury. He embraced Reconstruction and demanded to fight again. Under Dooku's direction, Separatist cybernetic experts and Geonosian biotechs rebuilt Grievous almost entirely. Dooku first placed in his hands a weapon that had belonged to a long-dead friend who had once been a Jedi. Then he instructed the Kaleesh in lightsaber combat and refined each motion to craft the ultimate Jedi killer. In 32 BBY, Dooku returned to the Jedi Temple and slipped into the archives. Using Sifo-Dyas' authorization, he erased Kamino from the charts and hid the cradle of the army. As he left, he noticed agitation among the Jedi and asked Jocasta Nu why. She said Qui-Gon Jinn had reported contact with the Sith on Tatooine. Jinn and his Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi had gone to Naboo to negotiate with Viceroy Newt Gunray about lifting the blockade. Gunray followed Sidious's orders and tried to have them killed. The attempt failed, and the Jedi escaped with Queen Padme Amidala after an encounter with Darth Maul, a suspected Sith Lord. Dooku answered that Jinn had an active imagination, to which Nu reminded him that he once did as well, but he said such imagination held little value in those halls. Dooku then found Jinn walking with Master Yaddle and pressed him about the Sith. He guessed correctly that the Council did not want to believe that conclusion. The former Master also said he had warned them for years about a coming darkness and that they had ignored him. Yaddle, speaking for the Council, said she did not doubt Jinn, yet saw no reason to spread alarm before they knew more. She urged caution as Dooku told Jinn to act carefully if he met a Sith again, and added that he would no longer be there to protect him. Not long after, Jinn, Kenobi, and Amidala returned to Naboo and broke the Federation invasion. Maul killed Qui-Gon in the duel that followed. During the same span, Dooku ensured that Sifo-Dyas would never speak. Using the name Tyrannus, he contacted Lom Pike of the Pike Syndicate and ordered him to murder Dyas by shooting down his shuttle during a mission. The killing closed the last mouth that knew the origin of the army, and Dooku took control of the project. News of Qui-Gon's death drew Dooku back to the Great Tree in the Temple of Coruscant. He had taken a young Jinn there many times. Yaddle approached and told him the funeral would be held on Naboo and that the Council would attend. Dooku said he would not go because his presence would not be welcomed. She asked if he blamed the Council, to which he answered that Jinn had become one with the Force and that letting go was required. Dooku then traveled to the works to confront Sidious about the cost of his schemes. Unbeknownst to him, Yaddle had her own suspicions about Dooku. She followed him in secret and learned that the former Jedi Master had met up with the shadowy figure. During that time, Dooku accused Sidious of making him betray everything and everyone he had known. The Sith Lord answered that every act had served a greater good, and that such betrayal had been necessary. After hearing their exchange, Yaddle confronted them and urged Dooku to surrender to her and help defeat Sidious. He hesitated, but Sidious said the Jedi blindly served a corrupt Senate and ordered Dooku to prove his loyalty. Dooku ignited his blade and fought Yaddle, pressing the experienced Jedi Master back. Wanting to convince Dooku to help end the Sith once and for all, Yaddle admitted that the Council had been wrong, and told him she had stepped down. She begged him to turn back, but he did not. They crossed blades again as Yaddle retreated toward the doorway that led to her ship. Dooku mocked her for running to the Council. She answered that he had run straight into evil. His anger sharpened, forcing him to hurl her into the doorframe. Dooku threw the lever and shut the heavy door down on Yaddle, believing he had killed her. As Dooku fell into anguish, Sidious lifted him with praise and called him worthy. Then Yaddle rose, summoned the last of her strength, and raised the door. However, the effort drained her as she lay at Dooku's feet to tell him that many would suffer under his scheme for order. Dooku replied that he would give her peace and killed her. Killing a Jedi Master, a powerful Council member at that, completed Dooku's fall to the dark side. With Maul gone, Sidious was in need of a new apprentice. He anointed Dooku as his new follower, christening him with the name Darth Tyrannus. Dooku considered the name formidable and wore it with pride, but there were other things to do as the new master and apprentice duo needed to tear the Republic apart. Chapter 9. The Groundwork for a Civil War. Palpatine had risen to the rank of Supreme Chancellor, the most powerful person in the Republic. Soon after, Sidious murdered his master Darth Plagueis, allowing Dooku to become a true Sith Lord by virtue of the Rule of Two. Resorting to working as equals, Sidious handled the politicking over at the Republic, using his influence to steadily stir trouble within the Senate. Meanwhile, Dooku prepared the galaxy for war. On a moon of Bogdan, Dooku recruited Jango Fett as the template for a clone army, while using the name Tyrannus. He offered a large salary and promised Fett an unaltered clone as part of the compensation. Sifo-Dyas had ordered biochips for every clone as a check against rogue Jedi, but the Sith Lords used this to their advantage, altering the chips and using them as their trump card against the Jedi when the time was right. After securing Fett, Dooku advanced the larger Sith design by uniting galactic corporations with worlds that had grown tired of the Republic. He fostered an alliance of separatists, eventually becoming their idealistic leader at the Count of Sereno. He also led the independent movement for self-determination, which allowed him to visit universities and deliver lectures. While Dooku still oversaw Grievous's training in the ways of the lightsaber, he still wanted a true acolyte, just like any other Sith Lord. His chance encounter with the Dathomirian Jedi Asajj Ventress on Ratatak proved to be vital. With Sidious's blessing, Tyrannus took Ventress as his apprentice, training her in the dark side of the Force to use her as an assassin. Her first task was to sever her master's final ties to the light. Dooku ordered Ventress to find his sister Jensa, who had vital information about his plot against the Republic. Unbeknownst to Ventress, this was to be an assassination mission, as Dooku ordered her to murder Jensa in front of him, proving herself worthy as his apprentice. Sometime later, Dooku returned to public view openly. He seized a Republic holonet station in the Raxus system and delivered a broadcast attacking corruption in the Republic. Outer and mid-rim systems already chafed under ineffective bureaucracy. His speech primed them for a separatist cause. He also meddled across the galaxy relentlessly by aiding anti-Republic coups on Ryloth and interfered in the politics of Kashyyyk and Onderon. He began to rally worlds and major corporations into the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Dooku also refused every offer to negotiate with Palpatine. After the Confederacy of Independent Systems, or CIS, took shape, he traveled to Geonosis to renew Bactoid's contract with the Geonosians. Dooku set an early headquarters in the Tion hegemony. The House of Tion still held sway, yet his presence secured strong support for the CIS. In the tense years before the Clone Wars, he courted Eriadu's governor, Wilhuff Tarkin. He told Tarkin that war was inevitable, and pressed hard for Eriadu's strength. Palpatine had arranged these meetings to test Tarkin's loyalties, but Tarkin remained firm to the Republic, to the delight of the secretive Darth Sidious. More importantly, Dooku also promised Viceroy Newt Gunray that he would eliminate Senator Amidala, who was vital to foiling his plans of taking over Naboo several years prior. This promise to the Trade Federation was vital for the outbreak of a war between Dooku's faction and the Republic his master had been controlling in secret. Chapter 10. The beginning of the Clone Wars. Dooku's schemes had become all too public for the Jedi to ignore. Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi and his Padawan Anakin Skywalker were tasked to guard the Senator, eventually foiling an attempt on Amidala's life. The failed assassination attempt turned Obi-Wan's attention toward what could possibly be a bigger scheme orchestrated by a more nefarious group. Jango Fett, who had failed in killing the Senator, didn't know he had Kenobi on his tail. The Jedi traced the bounty hunter to Kamino and eventually Geonosis, where he saw Count Dooku meeting with Commerce Guild leaders as they pledged their assets and loyalty to the Separatists. Kenobi intercepted the meeting and sent a report, but droidekas trapped him mid-transmission, taking him alive. Dooku visited the cell and feigned surprise, denying any ties he had to Padmé's assassination attempt. He even spoke of Qui-Gon, whom he believed would have joined his cause had he still been alive. Dooku went on to say that the Sith controlled the Senate, but Obi-Wan rejected the claim and even said that Jin would have never joined the Count. The Sith simply left him to his fate, knowing he was going to eventually have him executed. Anakin and Padmé went on a daring rescue mission that also got them caught. Dooku arranged the execution of Amidala, Kenobi, and Anakin in the Petranaki Arena, where they fought bravely until Master Windu led a rescue team of 200 Jedi. The Jedi fought their best against overwhelming numbers, but were no match for the sheer firepower of Dooku's droids. Before the droids could finish the job, Grandmaster Yoda arrived and saved the day with the newly discovered clone army. Dooku watched the clone army arrive with glee. This was the moment his master had been waiting for before withdrawing to the Geonosian Command Center. When asked about the clones by the other Separatist leaders, Dooku feigned ignorance of his knowledge of the clone army, and then gave Poggle, the leader of the Geonosians, blueprints for the ultimate weapon, which happened to be the Death Star. The Sith Lord promised that the designs would be safe with his master. He then fled on a speeder with Obi-Wan and Anakin chasing him to a secret hangar. The Jedi duo took Dooku on, only for Dooku to take Anakin out with Force lightning, something Skywalker had never faced before. Afterward, he made quick work of Obi-Wan's defense, showing the difference in their skills and experience while voicing his disappointment about Kenobi's technique. Anakin rejoined the fight and fought Dooku on his own, only for the more skilled duelist to disarm him, literally. Dooku cut Anakin's right arm off, beating the young Padawan easily. But before Dooku could finish the job, he heard a cane hitting against the floor. In the doorway stood Yoda, Dooku's former master. After a brief exchange, Dooku saw himself superior to his old master, as his powers have grown substantially ever since he started meddling in the dark side. Their ensuing duel, though, showed that Yoda easily matched Dooku's mastery of the dark side of the Force. An epic saber battle ensued, forcing Dooku to retreat instead of trying to determine whether or not he was already strong enough to defeat his former master. Successful in his retreat, Dooku surprisingly went to Coruscant unbeknownst to the Jedi that he and his master were there the entire time. Sidious then confirmed to Dooku that the war had begun and that their plans were in motion. Chapter 11: The Height of the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars had begun, and Count Dooku took an active role as the leader of the Separatists, seeking to destroy the Republic and start a new order in the galaxy. Meanwhile, the Jedi Order reformed their ranks, having lost dozens of Jedi during the Battle of Geonosis. They took over the Grand Army of the Republic, turning from keepers of the peace to generals of war, leading clones into battle against the overwhelming droid numbers of the CIS. As the Separatist leader, Dooku's role was not on the battlefield, but in the political realm. He took an active part in bolstering the Confederacy's strength, using whatever means necessary to win more allies and force systems to bow to their power. As their leader, despite having a Separatist Senate in place, Dooku was able to overrule anything in the Confederacy and was their de facto dictator. The Hutts, of course, were part of Dooku's long-term plans, believing that the Hutt clan had enough power and control over the Outer Rim to strengthen the Separatist ranks through their hyperspace lanes. He devised a plan to put Zero the Hutt in the leadership shoes of the Hutt clan. In doing so, he used Ventress as an extension of his will. The Dark Agent kidnapped Jabba the Hutt's son to use as a bargaining chip, while also putting the Jedi in a tough position. With Dooku assuring Zero he would have complete control over the Hutts, Ventress tricked Jabba into believing that his son had been killed by the Jedi during their rescue mission. However, Anakin safely recovered the Huttlet, but crashed into the deserts of Tatooine. Eager to put the Hutt clan in the palm of his hands, Dooku followed Skywalker to the Dune Sea, where they fought. This time, Anakin more than held his ground, unlike the last time they dueled, but the battle was cut short after Anakin revealed that the Huttlet was with his apprentice, Ahsoka Tano. Anakin left the fight to help his Padawan against Dooku's Magna Guards. Eventually, Jabba learned of Zero's treachery, forcing Dooku to admit that his plan had failed. Jabba then granted access to his hyperspace lanes to the Republic, which, in truth, was part of the Sith's grander design of spreading the clone forces all over the galaxy. It was a victory disguised in defeat for Dooku and his master. Not too long after, Dooku learned that King Katunko of Toydaria intended to meet Yoda on Rugosa, and was considering the Republic. He sent Ventress to win over the king. She offered a test. If Yoda with 3 clone troopers defeated her droid battalion, Toydaria could join the Republic. If her droids captured Yoda, Toydaria would join the Separatists. Dooku approved and judged Yoda reckless for leaving Coruscant. Yoda prevailed, with Katunko witnessing Ventress's act with treachery. Toydaria declared for the Republic, but was nearly killed by Ventress before Yoda's intervention. The loss added more fuel to Dooku's fire of disappointment toward his apprentice. Dooku next joined General Grievous aboard the prototype heavy cruiser Malevolence in the Abrogado system. A Republic fleet arrived, allowing Dooku to test out the power of his secret ion cannon, disabling the cruisers for destruction. The mysterious ship and its powerful weapon forced Skywalker to spring into action, mounting a daring rescue mission against the Malevolence. Grievous's next target was a medical center operated by the Republic, but upon learning that Skywalker and his strike team were also on their way, Dooku warned his general not to underestimate Skywalker. He had already seen the extent to which Anakin would take his recklessness to achieve victory. Dooku knew Grievous was not prepared for what Skywalker had in store for him. To that end, Dooku arranged to capture Senator Amidala when she traveled to a nearby system to negotiate with the banking clan. Knowing Skywalker's weakness was his soft side for his secret wife, the Sith Lord wanted to use Padme as a bargaining chip. However, the plan failed, leading to the destruction of the Malevolence, unbeknownst to Dooku, who never received a status report from General Grievous. At that point, Dooku's disappointment in his apprentices was growing ever larger. As the conflict settled into a stalemate, Viceroy Newt Gunray was seized by the Republic. Sidious warned Dooku that the Viceroy could not be allowed to face Jedi interrogation because Neimoidians were known for their loose lips. To that end, Dooku planned to send Ventress to free or silence him, even as Sidious questioned her competence after her earlier failures. Still, Dooku gave his assassin the mission and warned that she must prove herself. Ventress succeeded, aiding in Gunray's escape. Dooku then arranged a test for Grievous. He lured Jedi Master Kit Fisto, Fisto's former apprentice Nadar Veb, and their clone troopers to the fortress on Vasek. He deactivated the Magna Guards and offered Fisto an alternative prize while Nadar pursued Gunray. Dooku told Grievous that the trial had been arranged, to which Grievous succeeded in killing the inexperienced Nadar but failed in defeating Kit Fisto, who had escaped the fortress. Dooku remarked that there was room for improvement, considering that Grievous merely killed an easier target. Soon afterward, Dooku captured Skywalker in a skirmish between their forces. Kenobi arrived in time to rescue his former apprentice, opening a confrontation with Dooku. However, the Count fled to his solar sailor as Republic forces closed in. Kenobi shot Dooku down, forcing him to crash land on Vancor, where he was captured by Hondo Ohnaka and his Weequay pirates after learning he was a Sith Lord. Anakin and Obi-Wan followed Dooku and tried to bargain with the Weequay for the Sith Lord. However, they were also captured by the pirates as Hondo wanted to maximize his profits. In what was an unsteady alliance, Dooku worked together with the Jedi to escape the pirates. As Dooku fled the planet, he harbored a grudge against Hondo for what was one of the most embarrassing moments in his life. Upon his return from his previous skirmishes, Dooku secretly supported Death Watch on Mandalore. He spoke with Pre Vizsla of Concordia about the Jedi's inquiry into the terrorist attacks on the planet. They knew that if the Republic sent an occupation force, the people would revolt and join Death Watch, allowing the traditional Mandalorians to take over the planet. To that end, Dooku had Vizsla send an assassin to Coruscant to kill Duchess Satine Kryze. However, with the help of her good friend Obi-Wan, Satine survived the assassination attempt. Still, Mandalore was under Death Watch's control. Dooku warned Vizsla that Death Watch would never hold the planet for long without its armies. The uneasy alliance led to a betrayal as Dooku fought Vizsla, leaving a lightsaber scar on the Mandalorian's face as a parting gift. Meanwhile, Vizsla swore vengeance on Dooku and the Sith. Chapter 12: Failed Apprentices. In the middle of the war, there seemed to be no end in sight, as both forces balanced one another with wins and losses. But that wasn't enough for Dooku, and more importantly, Darth Sidious. The Sith wanted absolute victory, and Sidious believed that Dooku's apprentice was far from worthy, especially after her repeated failures against the Jedi. Weakness had no place within the Sith, and so Sidious ordered Tyrannus to eliminate his assassin. But in truth, Sidious was growing fearful of Ventress's growing power. Knowing that the never-ending cycle of the Rule of Two involved an apprentice killing a master, Sidious wanted to ensure his place as the master. He didn't want Ventress to grow strong enough to help Dooku overthrow him. As such, he wanted the assassin gone, an order Dooku hesitantly complied with, as he didn't want his master questioning his fidelity. He reached Ventress at Sullust and recalled her reinforcements. She begged for help destroying the Jedi, however, Dooku merely told her she was no longer his apprentice, and that death was coming. Tyrannus then called the tactical droid TJ-912 aboard its destroyer. He ordered the droid to target the flagship and kill Ventress. TJ-912 executed the strike and reported her death. After confirming with the droid that Ventress was indeed dead, Tyrannus commanded a withdrawal and notified Sidious that his assassin had been destroyed. His loyalty stood affirmed. However, Ventress survived and returned home to Dathomir to meet with Mother Talzin and the rest of the Night Sisters. While Talzin had an uneasy alliance with Dooku, she was more loyal to her daughters. To that end, she aided Ventress in an assassination attempt against Dooku, sending her and a few other sisters to Sereno. Ventress and Night Sisters posed as Jedi and infiltrated his palace. Their poison dulled the Count's senses, but Dooku was still far more powerful. He answered with Sith lightning, driving the assailants off and foiling their attempt, but Dooku's dulled senses blinded him to the fact that Ventress was still alive. Mother Talzin then contacted Dooku. She knew of the loss of his prized assassin, offering him a mail from Dathomir as a replacement. Dooku accepted the offer, believing Talzin was doing this to better their alliance. This led to the creation of Savage Opress, who had been strengthened by rage and Night Sister magic. On Sereno, Talzin delivered the Night Brother Savage Opress. Dooku admired Opress at first sight. Talzin described him as the fiercest of his kind and assured Dooku that Opress would serve him well. However, Opress was supposed to be a trap set in place to eventually betray Dooku and serve as Ventress's ally. Still, Opress needed to grow in power and experience before he was ready to take on a powerful Sith Lord. Dooku sent him to seize the Republic outpost on Deveron, where Opress succeeded after eliminating the Jedi stationed there. News of the victory convinced Dooku that this new apprentice was strong enough to take the previous one's place. He believed that together they could defeat Sidious and rule the galaxy. But Dooku proved to be a harsh master to Opress. He drilled lightsaber combat and the power of the dark side into his apprentice, using pain and torture to strengthen the Dathomirian Zabrak. Dooku used Force Lightning to pry the hatred out of Opress and force obedience out of him, but those methods proved too harsh that they eventually backfired. Dooku sent Opress to capture the Toydarian king. However, he failed in doing so because he opted to kill the king instead. Angered by his apprentice's failure, Dooku pelted him with Force Lightning, forcing hatred to overcome Opress's obedience. That was when Ventress revealed herself alive, exposing that she was Opress's real master. The Dathomirian duo attacked Dooku together, forcing the Sith Lord on the defensive. But when Ventress berated her supposed apprentice, Opress had had enough. In his rage, he dominated both Dooku and Ventress, foiling Ventress's revenge plot. The former assassin escaped Dooku amid the chaos. Meanwhile, Opress also forced his way out of Dooku's services as the Sith Lord was now left without an apprentice to carry out his will. Chapter 13. Encounters with Anakin. Dooku's failures as a master were well documented. His first Jedi apprentice failed as a Jedi after leaving the Order. Qui-Gon Jinn died an untimely death, and Dooku's final Jedi apprentice turned to the dark side and was a disgrace to his legacy. Meanwhile, as a Sith Lord, both his apprentices ended up betraying him. Now his legacy hung in the balance as he knew he needed the help of a younger and equally powerful apprentice to eventually help him overthrow Darth Sidious. Fate would have it that he often bumped into Anakin Skywalker during the war. Turning Skywalker to the dark side, however, required finesse and patience instead of force. He knew Anakin was loyal to the Republic, but was increasingly becoming more popular because of his unorthodox methods as a renegade. Dooku also knew Skywalker was growing stronger as the war raged on, making him believe that Anakin would one day become a good ally against Sidious. So, instead of seducing him to the dark side, Dooku wanted to steadily draw the darkness out of the young Skywalker. In a campaign involving the Gungans of Naboo, Dooku and his Magna Guards proceeded to duel with Anakin. Every chance he got, he always made it clear to Anakin that the Sith controlled the whole galaxy without the Jedi's knowledge. Of course, every duel also proved vital because Dooku used their encounters as opportunities to test Skywalker's skills while drawing more darkness out of him. In that battle, he and his Magna Guards captured Skywalker to use him as a bargaining chip against the Republic, who had Grievous in their custody. The Sith Lord bargained with Padme Amidala, knowing that the Senator was close with the Jedi Knight. At first, Amidala refused to give Grievous up in exchange for Anakin, but as Dooku continued to torture Skywalker, Padme had no choice but to exchange the Cyborg general for her secret husband. Not too long after, Dooku allied himself with the Zygerian slaver Commander Darth Stenar and Queen Mirage Sintel, who had captured a Togruta colony for the purposes of enslaving them. Owing to his past as a slave, Anakin took on this mission as he harbored a deep hatred for slavers. But in doing so, Skywalker needed to get close to Queen Mirage. But the Queen captured and subdued Anakin, believing he could be her bodyguard and slave. After learning that the Queen had Anakin under her control, Dooku demanded for his execution. Though he admired her scheme of enslaving the Jedi, Dooku still wanted Skywalker dead, for he wanted the Jedi Order destroyed, not enslaved. He warned the Queen that her control over Anakin was but an illusion. Still, the Queen refused to execute Skywalker, prompting the Zygerian Prime Minister Molech to adjudge her unfit to rule. Dooku then used the Force to choke the Queen as Skywalker arrived to witness the deed. The Sith Lord and the Jedi Knight fought, but Dooku eventually escaped by telling the Zygerian Royal Guard to kill Skywalker for the Queen's murder. Chapter 14: Clone Wars Side Stories. Dooku may have been unsuccessful at either turning Anakin to the dark side or killing him, but he saw more success in his other endeavors during the middle of the war. He never forgot about the treachery of Asajj Ventress and Savage Opress, and their common denominator was none other than Mother Talzin. To that end, Dooku dispatched Grievous to wipe out Talzin and the Night Sisters at the behest of Sidious. Grievous and the droid army proved strong against Night Sister magic, but Talzin, however, used the very same lock of hair Dooku gave her decades ago as her trump card. She used her magic to curse Dooku, who was light years away. Talzin demanded he call off Grievous and the army, but Dooku relented. He ordered his general to find and kill Talzin before she killed him. Grievous arrived just in time to defeat Talzin in the Night Sister village, allowing their campaign to be successful as the Night Sisters were rendered nearly extinct. Dooku had exacted his revenge on Talzin, even though it nearly cost him his life. Following the Night Sister massacre, Dooku expressed his concerns to Grievous about Savage Opress, fearing that the monstrous Night Brother might go rogue with Talzin gone. Dooku sensed he was becoming more powerful, wondering if Opress would become a danger to him and his master if he were to find a purpose. Unbeknownst to Dooku, Darth Maul had returned to the galactic stage with Opress at his side. Dooku had sensed this but was unsure of what it was. But instead of sending Grievous to hunt down Opress, he sent him against Onaka for revenge, as the pirate once held him prisoner for ransom. Onaka survived the assault, but much of his base was left in ruins. Then there was another story, much darker than Dooku had been involved with in the past. He traveled to the planet Bray to meet with a different Dark Lord named Ravna at the Citadel of Light. Ravna was neither Sith nor Jedi. He didn't even use the Force. Instead, he was akin to a vampire, capable of infecting living beings to turn them into violent, bloodthirsty creatures. Dooku wanted to work with Ravna in the hopes of using his power to turn clones into his minions. But Ravna's goal was to infect the entire galaxy. So even with the interventions of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Adi Gallia, the Dark Lord betrayed Dooku. He proceeded to transform the Sith Lord before Kenobi forced Dooku to tap into his anger by calling him pathetic. That was part of the plan because the Count used his power to attack Ravna. As he kept the vampire occupied with Force lightning, Dooku told Kenobi and Gallia to bury him under rubble, defeating the creature and allowing Dooku to escape. The galaxy still had something more in store for Dooku, after all, as the war raged on. Chapter 15: Nearing the End of the War. The war was still seemingly at a deadlock between the two forces, but Dooku received a transmission from Admiral Trench as he received word of an event that could possibly foil the Sith's plans. From a line held on Ringo Vinda, Trench reported that a clone had murdered his Jedi general while trapped in a trance-like state. Tyrannus warned his master that Order 66 risked exposure. Sidious ordered him to abduct the trooper and examine him. Dooku relayed the command to Trench, who carried out the seizure. Dooku praised the success and demanded that the prisoner be sent to him. But plans always find a way to collapse. Acting as Darth Tyrannus, Dooku heard from Lama Su and Nala Se about the trooper. He demanded the inhibitor chip and repeated his lie about its intent, claiming only Sifo-Dyas had known of it. CT-5555, the clone trooper known as Fives, stole the chip. Worried, Tyrannus insisted the Jedi must not learn the truth as he tried to find a way to kill the clone. The plan succeeded with Fives' death. After the clone's demise, Sidious gave Tyrannus the chips and ordered their destruction to ensure their plan would stay hidden. Sidious then assigned a political task. He told Dooku to recruit Senator Rush Clovis again and install him as the head of the banking clan. Dooku contacted Clovis through the medical droid that treated him. He offered to pay the Confederacy's interest on its loans and to provide details of the moon's secret accounts. In exchange, Clovis would take control of the clan and serve the separatist agenda. Clovis took office on CPO. Dooku congratulated him, then demanded repayment. If Clovis resisted, Dooku would expose the appointment and halt Confederate payments. Pressured, Clovis raised Republic interest rates to keep the bank afloat. Dooku arrived with a fleet and ordered Commander Kraken to begin the invasion. He entered Clovis's office and confronted Padme Amidala. Beck Lawise objected when Dooku ordered Amidala's arrest, saying their Senate would not approve. Dooku forced Amidala to shoot Lawise. Soon after, Sidious warned Tyrannus that the Republic fleet would arrive shortly. Anakin Skywalker led the attack against Kraken's formation. Dooku boarded Kraken's flagship and ordered a withdrawal from Scipio. But Kraken protested the order, informing Dooku that droid forces remained on the surface. Dooku dismissed the objection and repeated the command. The fleet pulled back and left the droid army behind. The retreat stranded Separatist units and ceded the ground battle to the Republic. Around 19 BBY, Dooku dispatched the Serenian Duke Solha to the Outer Rim world Mokivi. The Count had learned of cortosis, a metal that shut down lightsabers and deflected blaster bolts. Solha seized a fortress and converted it to a droid factory. He and his siblings manufactured a model of B-2 super battle droid equipped with cortosis armor. The plant also produced clone trooper armor plated with cortosis. Sidious intended to deploy that armor when Order 66 was executed to ensure absolute victory for the clones. The scheme did not last because Senator Amidala, Senior Captain Mithra Nurohodo, known as Thrawn, and Anakin Skywalker discovered the factory and attacked it. Thrawn was yet to become a part of the known galaxy, but was still loyal to the Chiss ascendancy in the unknown regions. However, he had to ally himself with the Republic for purposes beneficial to his people. During the assault, Amidala told Sola that Serenian custom allowed a prisoner one last request in what seemed like a ruse to slow down her execution. Sola said Dooku was still working out the details. Ultimately, however, the attackers destroyed the plant and ended the Cortosis project on Mokiv, and foiling another one of Dooku's plans. This failure, and many others, was one of the reasons Sidious was losing faith in his apprentice. Not too long after, Yoda discussed Sifo-Dyas with Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, oblivious to the fact that he was sharing the Jedi's plans with their biggest enemy. Alarmed, Sidious summoned Dooku to inform him that the Jedi had renewed their inquiry on Sifo-Dyas. Believing his apprentice was sloppy in hiding Sifo's demise, he punished Tyrannus with a choking grip. But he did send him to Obadiah, the homeworld of the Pike Syndicate, to block the Jedi from learning the truth about the clone army and its intended fate. Tyrannus arrived in time to find former Chancellor Finis Valorum, former aide Silman. Dooku killed him before the investigators, Skywalker and Kenobi, could unravel the trail. The Pikes later cornered Tyrannus during his fight with the Jedi. In speaking to the Sith, they unknowingly revealed to Skywalker and Kenobi that Dooku and the figure called Tyrannus were the same person. Kenobi and Skywalker were surprised to learn that Tyrannus was not some mysterious figure, but was the same exact enemy they'd been fighting for years. Feeling betrayed, the Pikes allied with the Jedi to kill Dooku. But Tyrannus killed the Pike leader, Lom Pike, before fleeing on a Coruscant freighter. Skywalker gave chase after a timely assist from his former master. There, the two had a rematch of their fateful one-on-one fight. Still, Dooku proved to be the more skillful duelist as he defeated Anakin and escaped. Soon after that incident, Kraken informed Dooku that Lord Sidious demanded his presence on Coruscant. Dooku traveled to the works and entered the tower's ceremonial chamber, where Sidious greeted him and spoke in a quiet voice. Both Sith felt Yoda's presence on Moraband for a reason they did not yet understand. Tyrannus offered his blood for a rite that would snare his former master. Together, they called Sith Lightning and began the illusion. The ritual formed a battlefield, where Yoda appeared with Anakin Skywalker, Captain Rex, and a squad of clone troopers. Their task was clear: eliminate the Sith. Dooku hurled Force Lightning into the ranks and broke their line. Skywalker closed for the kill and met Tyrannus blade to blade. Eventually, Anakin struck Dooku down within the vision, forcing the rite to end without them reaching their goal of breaking Yoda. That event made Sidious understand they needed more time if they were to break the Jedi Grand Master. In turn, Dooku turned his gaze to a different prize near the end of the war. Reports spoke of a massive Kyber crystal buried on the neutral planet Utapau. He and General Grievous set a quiet operation in motion, hiring Amani mercenaries under Endente, a Sugi arms dealer. But Jedi Master Tuan found the site and paid with her life. Her death drew Kenobi and Skywalker to Utapau. The trail led through the plains and into the wilderness. They tracked Amani raiders and learned of the Sugi's movements. The mercenaries captured the Jedi and delivered them to Indente. He admitted the Confederacy's interest in the crystal and sensed profit. Kenobi and Skywalker tried to buy the crystal for twice the price. Indente contacted Dooku by hologram and demanded more money. Dooku ordered him to kill the Jedi and promised that Grievous would visit. The prisoners, however, defeated their guards and escaped with the crystal. Grievous learned of Indente's failure and executed him. With Blom's help, he ambushed the Jedi and seized the crystal, and loaded it onto his shuttle to transfer it to a supply ship. Kenobi and Skywalker pursued and fought through the decks before the cyborg captured Obi-Wan. Grievous sent word to Dooku, who ordered the execution of the Jedi Master and the transport of the Kyber crystals to Sereno. However, the Jedi broke free and sabotaged Grievous's ship. They destroyed the crystals along with Grievous's fleet. Grievous, however, escaped into the dark without informing Dooku of his failure. Chapter 16: The Dark Disciple and Maul. Luck was not on Dooku's side as far as apprentices were concerned. Ventress was a failure, and Oppress was too savage to control. Meanwhile, despite being more reliable, Grievous had his own share of failures. Unfortunately for Dooku, one of his apprentices was far from done with him. In the last stretch of the Clone Wars, Count Dooku ordered an operation on Marani, and the result was the erasure of the Maran species. He did not hide intent. Any Maran found alive was to be killed on sight. The Jedi Council on Coruscant watched the aftermath and weighed options beyond standard doctrine. Obi-Wan Kenobi proposed a partnership that would never pass in calmer times. Quinlan Vos would work with Asajj Ventress. Vos entered the underworld beside her and posed as a fellow hunter. He hid his identity until trust had some shape. When he told her the truth, she did not walk away because she wanted revenge for Dooku's crimes against her people and herself. She agreed to teach Vos the dark ways so that they could bring the Count down. When Vos finished the training Ventress had promised, word came from a separatist contact named Sumden. Dooku, with Grievous accompanying him, would travel to Raxus Secundus to accept the Raxian Humanitarian Award for service to the Confederacy. Before the ceremony, Dooku delivered a patriotic speech to a packed square. He defended the Separatist cause and blamed the Republic and the Jedi for the galaxy's pain. A banquet followed, and Ventress approached Dooku there to challenge him to a duel. He agreed and quietly called Grievous for support. Vos had planned for that. He confronted the cyborg and, though overwhelmed, managed to seal him in a chamber long enough to keep him away from the duel. During the duel, Ventress and Vos faced Dooku together. Dooku held the higher ground in skill and focus. He pressed the pair with precise footwork and cold burst of telekinesis. Vos refused to yield, but could not turn the tide of battle in their favor. Ventress fought to create space, yet the Count split their timing and isolated Vos. He captured the Jedi and ended the exchange with a surge of lightning. Ventress broke away after clashing with the freed Grievous. She escaped, but Vos fell into Dooku's hands and was taken to Sereno. On Sereno, the Count worked to break his prisoner. The torment dragged on until Dooku revealed a recording of Ventress killing Vos's former master, Thulm. Vos rejected it and held to the life he thought he knew. Dooku then produced Thulm's lightsaber and let the Jedi touch the past. Vos read the truth through psychometry and felt the hollow place that followed. Soon after, Ventress led a rescue with hunters drawn from Boba Fett's circle. They reached Vos, but he struck at Ventress with dark fury. The team withdrew empty-handed, and Dooku had won a new apprentice. Vos bent to the dark and pledged service while concealing a private plan to use Dooku to reach Darth Sidious and kill them both. He was a double agent, unbeknownst to both Dooku and Ventress. Not long after, the Count joined Sidious at the Spire on Stygian Prime to interrogate Maul about the Shadow Collective after he had been captured following his duel with his former master. But Maul escaped with Mandalorian commandos to Zanbar. Dooku sent Grievous and Tezuka to shatter Maul's strength and waited for the spirit of Mother Talzin to show herself. He then traveled to Ord Mantell with Magna Guards to seize Maul and level the city if needed. Brother Viscus and Night Brothers attacked and were cut down. Before Dooku could finish Viscus, Maul's forces surrounded him. The former Sith offered a bargain that would turn the war. He tried to convince Dooku to abandon Sidious and serve Maul. Dooku refused and named Sidious the greater power, but they never fought because the Republic forces boarded the ship. The situation forced the Count to fight beside Maul long enough to kill the Jedi who stood in the way, including Tipley, before escaping with Gar Saxon and Rook Kast. Maul brought Dooku to Dathomir. In the Night Brother village, Talzin's magic drained the Count to rebuild her body anew, allowing her to take physical form again following her death at the hands of Grievous a while back. Soon after, she possessed Dooku and used his frame as a shield. Sidious and Grievous arrived during the rite and forced a shift. Talzin stepped free of Dooku and took shape in the flesh. The battle broke across the chamber as Dooku stood with his master and pressed Talzin and Maul with blade and lightning. Maul fled when the tide turned. Meanwhile, Grievous struck Talzin down, once more becoming her killer. The Sith were victorious as Sidious told his apprentice their plan was still in motion. After Talzin's fall, Dooku set Quinlan Vos at his side and renewed the campaign against the Republic, with Vos using the name Admiral Enigma. Then Admiral Wolf Yularen carried intelligence that Dooku would strike Taris. The Council planned a recovery. With Ventress as a guide, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker infiltrated Dooku's Providence-class dreadnought and reached the bridge. They did not find Admiral Enigma there. Instead, they found Dooku. Skywalker met the Count in another duel while Kenobi and Ventress recovered Vos from a cell. The rescue had been staged. Vos appeared weak by design and the Jedi brought him home. Ventress sensed the truth, but her allies did not. Vos returned as a spy inside the Order, continuing his role as a double agent. He leaked 2 sensitive operations to Dooku, allowing the Separatists to strike before the Republic could act. But while the Council understood that Vos had fallen, they still sent him to finish Dooku. Ventress supported him. Vos slipped aboard Dooku's dreadnought and fought Dooku in the corridors. This time, he drove the Count to defeat. But while he was victorious, he refused to kill Dooku. Instead, he demanded that the Count lead him to Darth Sidious, as his ultimate mission was to destroy both Sith Lords, not just one. But before Dooku could squeal, Kenobi and Skywalker arrived to arrest both him and Vos. While escorts marched them toward the brig, Vos slipped the restraints and freed Dooku. The Count returned the favor. They cut down the Jedi Knights Akar Deshu and Kav Bayans and killed scores of clones. They stole Ventress's ship, the Banshee, but the Republic ship took their own ship down, forcing them to crash on Christophsis. The survivors reached a Separatist base carved inside a giant crystal tower and signaled within, with Dooku heavily injured from the crash. A hologram from Sidious demanded the Count's report. Instead of reporting, Dooku asked for help leaving the world. Before help could arrive, Republic forces began a full assault that shook them. The pursuit drove all of them into the outlying sanctum. Then a blaster shot struck Dooku and dropped him. Ventress said they should let him die, but Vos refused and kept him alive. Ventress dragged the Count into the sanctum as droids formed a line. Dooku woke and taunted her. But Vos arrived and argued with Ventress about his choice to stand with Dooku. Despite his injuries, the Count ended the talk with a storm of lightning aimed at Vos. But Ventress shoved Vos clear and took the full blast. She was mortally wounded. Dooku tried to draw Vos into murder by angering him. However, despite his feelings for Ventress, Vos saw the trap and refused to fall deeper into the dark side. He told Ventress he was done with the dark. While Vos held the dying Ventress, Dooku fled the sanctum to meet a ship sent by Sidious and escaped with aid from Grievous. The Jedi later pardoned Vos, who returned to service carrying the weight of what had happened. As for Dooku, this was the last time his master would aid him in a life-or-death situation. Chapter 17, Betrayed. The Clone Wars neared their end, and the battle reached just outside Coruscant. By that time, it had been clear to Palpatine that Anakin was ripe for seduction. As the Chancellor, he formed a good relationship with Skywalker, often acting like the father figure Anakin never had. While Dooku advanced the Separatist cause, his master had been grooming a younger and more talented warrior to serve as a replacement. So, just before the Battle of Coruscant, Sidious had decided Anakin needed to take his place as the next Sith apprentice. More importantly, the Sith Lord no longer had a use for his aging apprentice. To that end, Dooku became a part of the plan to capture Palpatine during the Battle of Coruscant. Dooku then informed Grievous of the impending news that the Separatist had a chance of recovery and victory. As such, Grievous's fleet was able to leap directly from the Outer Rim to Coruscant thanks to Darth Sidious, who had obtained the coordinates and provided them with a plan to kidnap the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. Earlier, Dooku had relocated his command post to Grievous's flagship, the Invisible Hand, allowing him to stay close to his most trusted general and to ensure his orders were followed to the letter. While Grievous posed no threat to him, Sidious wanted to avoid any setbacks to his plan because this was deemed the most crucial portion of his grander scheme of turning Anakin to the dark side. After Grievous captured the Chancellor, he held Palpatine captive in the Invisible Hand. Meanwhile, the general oversaw the battle from the communications tower. Dooku stayed close to Palpatine and ordered the general to attack the Republic fleet. As the Battle of Coruscant raged, Dooku proclaimed to the galaxy that the Republic leader was his hostage. Quick to react, the Jedi High Council sent their two most effective Jedi frontliners to rescue the Chancellor. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker sprang into action and made their way through the debris and the fighters just above the atmosphere of Coruscant before infiltrating the Invisible Hand. While they struggled, the Jedi duo made their way to the bridge where Chancellor Palpatine was being held. They attempted to rescue him before Dooku arrived to confront the two Jedi. He then engaged them in a lightsaber duel. This time, Anakin and Obi-Wan were ready to take him as a duo. During the duel, Dooku took Kenobi out of commission by knocking him unconscious. This led to a one-on-one battle between Anakin and Dooku, one that had always been in the Count's favor throughout his numerous duels with Skywalker. But as Anakin boldly proclaimed before their battle, his powers had doubled. It was not a mere bluff spoken out of hubris, because Anakin had indeed become too powerful for Dooku. Tapping into his rage, Skywalker overpowered Dooku. With one slash of his lightsaber, he severed both the Count's hands and caught Dooku's saber out of the air. He crossed it with his own blade at Dooku's throat, with the Count looking shocked after his defeat. Palpatine praised Anakin for his victory, but he quickly ordered Anakin to kill Dooku, with the Count horrified by his master's command. Dooku had been betrayed as he learned the harsh truth about being a Sith. It was all about power and betrayal, and Sidious happened to be on the advantageous side. Dooku also understood that he was always just a tool that Sidious used from the very start. The signs were there, and even Maul and Talzin warned him about his fate as a disposable pawn. But he truly believed he and his master were going to change the galaxy together. At that moment, however, it was clear Sidious never cared for him at all, ordering the young Jedi to kill him. Anakin initially relented because it was not the Jedi way to kill an unarmed prisoner. However, after a second prompt from the Chancellor, Anakin pulled the two lightsabers apart, decapitating and killing Dooku with a swift movement. Dooku died the same way he entered the galaxy. He was abandoned by his father at birth, leaving him to his death. And in death, his master abandoned him the same way. Kaimeen Jai Shalal was born around 60 BBY on the tropical planet Kali. The Kalish were a red-skinned reptilian species whose entire culture revolved around religion and war. For generations, tribal wars had been a constant, as in the Kali tradition, they believed that their achievements in battle could grant them a divine status in afterlife. However, at the time of Shalal's birth, the Kalish suffered under the oppression of the Huk, a technologically advanced insectoid species. The Huk raided Kali, exploiting the Kalish people, enslaving them and selling them like tools on the black market. The young Shalal grew up with a deep-seated hatred for the Huk species and was trained by his father in marksmanship at a young age. The boy excelled, and by the age of 8, he had already slain over 40 Huk with his rifle. His reputation as a warrior grew rapidly, and by the age of 22, Shalal had killed so many Huk that the Kalish started to revere him as a demigod. But it wasn't just the amount of kills he was able to amount, but also his unmatched tactical intellect, making him one of the greatest Kalish war leaders of his time. When Shalal's father fell in battle, he left behind his Mumu skull mask for his son to inherit. That night, Shalal dreamed of hunting a Mumu, a boar native to Kali, using twin lig swords. Upon walking out of this dream, he donned his father's mask and ventured into the jungle to fulfill the vision. Shortly after, Shalal came across Rondero Liege Kumar, a female Kalish swordswoman clad in a Karabakh skull mask wielding twin-lig swords. Recognizing the significance of his dream, Shalal saw himself not as the hunter, but as the hunted, the one destined to be changed by this woman. Together, they became an unstoppable force against the Huk, feared across the battlefield. She strengthened his skill with blades while he trained her into a lethal sniper. As lovers and warriors, donning their symbolic masks, they became legends to the Kalish people. However, tragedy struck during a routine battle on the beaches of Kali. The Huk managed to overwhelm the two warriors, separating them. Kumar was surrounded and slain by the Huk. Her body was disposed of in the endless sea. Shilal was devastated. Without a proper burial, her soul would be lost, denied her rightful place in the afterlife. He searched desperately, but her remains were never found. Overcome with grief, he made a journey that was said to be impossible to the monolithic island of Basli, the sacred site where Kalish gods were said to ascend to the heavens. There, he pleaded for the return of his beloved, but the gods remained silent. Defeated for the first time in his life, Shilal returned home, a man forever changed. He attempted to live a normal life, taking 10 wives and fathering 30 children, but his mind never strayed far from the injustice he had suffered. He was no longer Shilal, the dreamer and the dreamt one, as the shamans had called him. He was simply a grieving warrior. He rejected his name, embracing instead his sorrow, his torment, and donned the name Grievous. Fueled by vengeance, Grievous unified the fractured Kalish tribes and took command of their armies, declaring himself the supreme warlord. He formed the Isvalshra, an elite force of Kalish warrior who acted as his bodyguards and most capable warriors. Under his leadership, the Kalish turned the tide of war, finally pushing the Huk off-world and capturing their spaceships. With their newfound spaceships, they reached out to other alien species, acquiring further weaponry and technology. For the first time in history, the Kalish were no longer defending. No, now they were conquering. Grievous and his armies conquered entire Huk colonies, burning them to the ground, slaughtering their populations. The Huk Empire was collapsing. Victory was within Grievous's grasp. The Huk, unable to respond to Grievous's campaign, were desperate for a way to stop him. Having contacts and influence on the Republic Senate, they sought intervention from the Galactic Republic, portraying themselves as victims of the Kalish aggression. The Republic heard their plea and sent the Jedi to deal with the Kalish. When the Jedi arrived on the battlefield donning their lightsabers, the Kalish and Grievous were cut down and driven back, forced to retreat back to Kali. In the aftermath, the Republic implemented severe sanctions and trade embargoes on Kali, plunging the planet into poverty. Thousands of Kalish starved to death due to the Republic's intervention, fostering a deep-seated hatred of the Jedi within Grievous, seeing them as the reason for the suffering of his people. It was then that San Hill, chairman of the Intergalactic Banking Clan, approached Grievous. The same banks that funded the Republic now sought to hire the warlord as a commander for their private droid army. In exchange for his services as a collection agent, the Banking Clan would erase Kali's debt and circumvent the trade embargo that way. Despite recognizing the irony of his situation, him being little more than a corporate enforcer, a slave to the Banking Clan, Grievous accepted the offer as in his mind, if he must enslave himself, it would be so that no Kalish would ever suffer enslavement again. True to their word, the Banking Clan restored Kali's economy, removing its debts and reviving trade. Grievous, in turn, proved to be a ruthless and highly effective agent, leading collection efforts and reclaiming overdue credits. Yet, despite his success, he found himself longing for the camaraderie of his former life. He was forced to work with the Banking Clan's B-1 battle droids, mindless machines which he deemed unworthy to what it meant to be a warrior. He thus demanded more sophisticated replacements. He wanted his elite warriors, the Isvalshra, by his side, but the Banking Clan refused to employ other Kalish, fearing they might be too difficult to control. Instead, in order to keep Grievous content, Hill authorized the creation of the IG-100 Magna Guards. While he was at first disgusted by their mindless nature, he soon recognized that they had their uses and ordered their reprogramming. He made sure that they would observe him in battle and learn to fight just as his old Huk-slaying comrades once had. Under his command, the Banking Clan's military forces became one of the most feared in the galaxy. For a time, Grievous seemed content. He ensured the endless flow of credits into the vaults of the Banking Clan for the betterment of his own people. His people were prospering, and he was a hero to them. He seemed at peace at last. But of course, fate had other plans. Chapter 2. Transformation. While serving the Banking Clan, Grievous received devastating news. In an unthinkable act, the Huk had launched a fresh wave of attacks on Kali, attempting to reclaim territory they had once occupied. In the chaos, they desecrated sacred burial grounds and temples of Kali. Grievous was furious. The Huk had already enslaved and slaughtered his people in life, and now they sought to rob them of peace in the afterlife, and the Republic had done nothing to stop them. Enraged beyond reason, Grievous abandoned his contract with the banking clan's droid army. Kali needed him, and he would answer. Rallying his Isvostra once more, he prepared to launch a counteroffensive that would annihilate the Huck once and for all. Sandhill was placed in a difficult position. He could not allow such defiance to go unpunished, but Grievous was too valuable to simply eliminate. He reached out to Poggle the Lesser, Archduke of Geonosis, and together with Count Dooku, they devised a way to ensure the warriors' permanent servitude. Grievous soon arrived on Kali and was anointed by a Kalish holy man, preparing for the renewed war. With his loyal Isvostra at his side, he boarded his troop shuttle, Martyr, and set off to resume the battle against the Huck. But, unbeknownst to him, his supposed allies of the banking clan had sabotaged his journey. They had planted an ion bomb aboard the shuttle and rigged his pilot seat for remote ejection. As the Martyr soared above the Genoa Sea, the bomb detonated. The explosion tore through the ship, sending it spiraling into the waters below. At the last moment, Dooku activated the remote ejection, separating Grievous from the doomed vessel. His Isvostra were not so lucky. All of them perished in the crash. Grievous survived, but he was gravely injured. Internal bleeding and shock left him barely clinging to life. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, Dooku arrived in person, using the arcane Sith heart stun technique to prevent his body from shutting down completely. It was in this vulnerable state that the Sith Lord whispered deception into his mind, telling him that the Jedi were responsible for the attack, that the Jedi, fearing his return, had struck first to protect their Huck allies. Grievous's broken body was retrieved by his Magna Guards, and then brought aboard a waiting shuttle. Inside, medical droids worked to stabilize him as they set course for Geonosis. He was transfused with the blood of Jedi Master Sifo-Dyas to stabilize his body further. Upon arrival, Poggle the Lesser and his Geonosian scientists began their work. Grievous's eyes, brain, and spinal cord were extracted from his failing body and transferred into a duranium alloy warframe, inspired by the ancient Krath war droids. His remaining organs were sealed within a synth-skin gut sac, rendering him impervious to the vacuum of space. The modifications did not stop at his body, severing a lot of connections to his people and culture. His abilities were enhanced, his vision sharpened, his aggression heightened, and unbeknownst to him, a hidden kill switch was implanted under the control of Dooku. When Grievous awoke, he was in shock. Seeing the monster he had become, he lay there in anguish. Turning around, he saw Sandhill standing there. His body, Sandhill explained, had been destroyed in a Jedi attack, along with his Isvostra. The banking clan had saved him, giving him a second chance at life. And now, Hill wanted him to meet Count Dooku, the leader of a growing separatist movement. Dooku made Grievous an offer, promising to destroy the Republic and the Jedi together. Fueled by a burning desire for vengeance against both the Republic and the Huck, Grievous agreed to join Dooku's cause. Dooku granted Grievous the title of Supreme Commander of the droid armies and presented him with his first lightsaber, the weapon of Sifo-Dyas, the Jedi whose blood now flowed through his veins. Although the midichlorian-rich blood of Sifo-Dyas had sustained his life, it didn't grant him any sensitivity to the Force as they had hoped. Grievous's new form, the fusion of flesh and machine, filled him with disgust. The memories of his past life clawed at the edges of his mind. When Dooku referred to him as a droid, something inside him snapped. In a violent outburst, he slaughtered every IG-100 Magna Guard in the room, declaring that he was not a machine. As a final act of defiance, he demanded a mask fashioned after the Mumu skull of his ancestors, along with cloaks in the style of Kalish warriors for himself and his Magna Guards. Dooku saw this as nothing more than vanity, but the truth was deeper. Somewhere buried beneath layers of cybernetics and separatist manipulation, the spirit of Kaimin Jai Shalal still fought to survive. But even with these moments of resistance, the plan had worked. The demigod of Kali had been reforged into the ultimate weapon. The Sith had their warlord. The banking clan had their enforcer. Grievous had become the tool they wanted him to be. Grievous was now forever their slave. Chapter 3. Start of the Clone Wars. Grievous was first unleashed upon the battlefield during the opening battle of the Clone Wars, the Battle of Geonosis. Deep within the labyrinthine Geonosian catacombs, he was tasked with ensuring the safety of the Separatist Council. When Jedi Master Usama Du, accompanied by a company of clone troopers, attempted to intercept the fleeing leaders, Grievous intercepted them. A terror of speed and strength, he cut them all down, leaving no survivors. Taking the lightsaber of Ursema Du as a trophy, he went on to depart Geonosis shortly afterwards aboard his personal starfighter, Soulless One. Impressed by his performance at Geonosis, Count Dooku took a personal interest in Grievous's combat abilities. Over the following months, Dooku personally trained him in the art of lightsaber combat. Grievous proved to be a prodigy, mastering all 7 classical forms of Jedi lightsaber combat, including the refined Makashi and the aggressive Juyo. He surpassed all of Dooku's previous apprentices in raw dueling skill despite not having any connection to the Force. Dooku was very impressed at his new commander and promised Grievous that he should soon get the chance to face the Jedi once again. This chance came 4 months after the Battle of Geonosis at the Battle of Hypori. Leading a massive army of battle droids, he orchestrated a devastating assault on a Republic task force, systematically eliminating all resistance from the Republic. He had completely outmatched them with his superior tactics and had the few surviving Jedi, including Ila Secura and Jedi High Council members Ki-Adi-Mundi and Shaak Ti, trapped within the wreckage of a downed Acclamator-class starship. The Jedi huddled together in fear, hearing the mechanical footsteps of hundreds of droids approaching, preparing for their final stand. But suddenly, the droids stopped their march and a mechanical voice seared through the chamber. A voice, taunting them that he'll kill them swiftly, granting them a warrior's death. The battle that followed was like nothing the Jedi had ever faced. Grievous fought like no organic being could. A whirlwind of flashing blades, his mechanical limbs contorted in impossible angles, striking from multiple directions at once. He moved with terrifying speed and precision, outmaneuvering even the Jedi Masters. One by one, he cut them down, pressing his advantage, stripping them of their weapons. Only Ki-Adi-Mundi remained standing. With all other Jedi either knocked unconscious or dead, Mundi fought desperately to hold Grievous at bay. However, before Grievous could deliver the killing blow, an ARC Trooper squad led by Captain Fordo arrived aboard a Republic gunship, holding Grievous at bay long enough to evacuate the wounded Jedi. Grievous watched them flee, taunting them that they had only delayed their inevitable demise. He collected the fallen Jedi's lightsabers, content with his victory. He was now a very much known component to the Jedi Order, being referred to as the Butcher of Hypori. In a single battle, he had killed 4 Jedi in solo combat. On Coruscant, the Jedi Council was shaken. Their fear forced them to break their own traditions, wanting more knights to face the danger presented by Grievous. Where once Jedi had to endure rigorous trials to achieve knighthood, now battlefield experience alone was enough. Among those rushed through the ranks was Anakin Skywalker. Grievous had gone from a feared warlord of wild space to the single greatest threat to the Republic's survival. Chapter 4: Supreme Commander of the Droid Army. As the Supreme Commander of the Droid Army, Grievous soon found himself on several battlefronts in order to help the Separatists gain a footholding in this war. Count Dooku, though, despite the several successes Grievous had shown so far, sought to test Grievous's strength by pitting him against 2 of his strongest subordinates, Asajj Ventress and the bounty hunter Dirge. In the ensuing duel, Grievous overpowered Ventress quickly, slamming her into a glass case. Dirge, after a short hassle, was decapitated, and when Ventress re-engaged him, Grievous calmly outmaneuvered her, dodging every strike before seizing her by the throat, declaring to her that he was the future, before choking her unconscious. Presenting Ventress's body to Dooku, Grievous asked if he could dispose of her. Dooku refused, acknowledging that both Ventress and Dirge still had a purpose to serve. However, Grievous had successfully humiliated them, proving beyond doubt that he was the true Supreme Commander of the droid armies. Dooku was thoroughly satisfied with Grievous, who had exceeded even his highest expectations. Meanwhile, Grievous's name had spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Even Republic news outlets had begun to refer to him as the Night Slayer, a metal monstrosity that slaughtered Jedi with their own weapons. With each battle, his legend grew, and the Jedi Order was learning to fear him. Chapter 5: Defeat on the Malevolence. As the Clone Wars raged on and his reputation growing, Dooku gave Grievous command of the CIS's new prototype superweapon, a subjugator-class heavy cruiser called the Malevolence, a warship equipped with 2 ion cannons capable of disabling entire fleets. Under Grievous's command, the Malevolence launched a series of assaults on Republic forces, leaving not a single survivor. When Jedi Master Plo Koon led a Republic fleet to engage the Malevolence, Grievous' superweapon easily disabled the entire fleet and blew it to pieces. However, this time around, the hunters that were dispatched to destroy the escape pods didn't report back. Grievous soon found out that a small freighter, the Twilight, carrying Jedi Master Plo Koon and a few clone survivors, had escaped. This was a major setback, as the new superweapon was no longer a secret. To make up for this failure, Grievous went on a rampage, targeting medical transports across the Outer and Mid-Rim. Thousands of Republic troops perished as he methodically destroyed unarmed medical convoys. Under Dooku's orders, he set his sights on an even greater target, the Khalida Shoals Medical Center, a Republic facility treating over 60,000 wounded clone troopers. However, the Republic anticipated this strike. A fleet was scrambled to intercept, led by Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. As soon as the Malevolence emerged from hyperspace, it unleashed its ion cannons, disabling several medical frigates as well as some of the approaching Y-Wing starfighters. But Skywalker was not so easily defeated. A successful bombing run tore through the warship's interior, striking at its ion cannon power conduits. The damage was critical, and the superweapon was no longer functional. Kenobi then arrived with reinforcements, and the Republic's Venator-class cruisers opened fire on the Malevolence. Heavily damaged, its engines failing, Grievous attempted to retreat. He had underestimated his opponents greatly. In a last-ditch effort to get the Malevolence to safety, Dooku revealed that Senator Padme Amidala had been lured to the sector and should be taken as a hostage to bargain with the Republic. The Malevolence captured Amidala's ship, forcing the Republic fleet to cease their assault, instead opting to rescue Amidala themselves by infiltrating the Malevolence. On board the ship, Grievous came face-to-face with Obi-Wan Kenobi for the first time. The Jedi General had grown a galaxy-wide reputation, and Grievous was eager to face him. Their duel was very short, as Kenobi merely focused on escaping. In the meantime, Skywalker managed to rescue the Senator and also sabotage the ship's navicomputer to steer it into a nearby moon. Grievous himself chased after the fleeing Jedi in his starfighter when he was informed by the panicked droids that the Malevolence's navicomputer was steering them into a moon. Knowing the battle was lost, Grievous jumped to hyperspace. Moments later, the Malevolence crashed into the moon, marking one of Grievous's most humiliating defeats. Chapter 6: The Outer Rim Blitz. After the catastrophic loss of the Malevolence, Grievous had something to prove, and prove himself he did. In his next campaigns, he struck back at the Republic, facing and eliminating Jedi during the Battle of Aneth and Battle of Bakura before launching a devastating blitz campaign across the Outer Rim. In just 1 month, he secured 6 major victories for the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Entire cities burned on Ord Mantell. Hyperlanes connecting the core to Bespin, Kessel, and Mon-Cala fell under Separatist control, and crucial Republic supplies of Tabana gas and spice were cut off. Even Republic news networks openly admitted that their foothold in the Outer Rim was now in jeopardy. The Separatists were advancing, and Grievous was advancing on multiple fronts. With the Republic's supply chains disrupted, Grievous set his sights on another critical target, their spy network. The Republic, however, caught wind of his fleet's movements and sent General Anakin Skywalker to intercept him. Grievous attempted to outmaneuver Skywalker's fleet by navigating through the system's asteroid ring, as that would force the Republic to engage them on his terms. However, Skywalker anticipated this. He deployed AT-TE walkers onto the asteroids, turning them into unexpected artillery platforms. With all of Grievous's shields focused toward the front, the walkers had clear shots at the weakest parts of the Separatist Munificent-class frigates. Grievous's fleet was obliterated. Realizing his loss, Grievous abandoned his fleet and rushed to his starfighter. As he tried to escape, he was nearly shot down by Skywalker. However, right before Skywalker was able to deliver the final shot, a piece of debris struck Skywalker's starfighter, crippling it just long enough for Grievous to escape to hyperspace. Though he had escaped, the general was far from finished. He was not to be beaten that easily by Skywalker. He took command of a nearby Separatist fleet while placing a spy droid inside Skywalker's own forces. The spy droid, R3-S6, would soon start feeding Grievous on Skywalker's movements. He had also arranged for the purchase of R2-D2, a droid full of Republic fleet codes and data. With these informations, perhaps they could use them to end the war swiftly. However, he was soon interrupted before he could extract the data, as Skywalker and a Republic strike team arrived to save R2. Knowing the value of R2, Grievous ordered his Magna Guards to defend the data at all costs, while he personally went to deal with the Jedi. When he rounded a corridor, he stopped and laughed. He couldn't believe it. He expected to find Skywalker, the Jedi who had previously bested him, but instead, before him stood a child. Ahsoka Tano, just 14 years old, radiated confidence as she ignited her blades. But Grievous had fought Jedi Masters. He knew she was no match for him. He quickly overwhelmed her, grabbing her by the throat and sought to humble her arrogance a bit before killing her. But before he could kill her, Captain Rex detonated explosives, shaking the station. Distracted by the explosion, Ahsoka used the Force to maneuver one of Grievous's own arms against him, severing it with his own lightsaber. The kid had survived and escaped. With the station set to self-destruct, Grievous saw himself on the retreat once again. The name Skywalker burned into his mind as he had lost for the third time to this Jedi in a short span of time. As always though, failure on Grievous's side was followed by a series of victories. To prove himself, Grievous led a 3-system conquest, capturing Jan Fathal, Koflis, and Nexus Ortai. After these successes, Dooku set his sights on something far greater, Kamino, the heart of the Republic's clone production. To achieve this, the Separatists first needed to neutralize Rishi Station, an outpost that acted as an early warning system for Kamino. Grievous sent the new commando droids to fulfill the task. However, the droids were soon overwhelmed by the surviving clone forces, which resulted in the destruction of the Rishi Station. Its destruction alerted the Republic of Grievous's intentions, and thus the assault on Kamino had to be abandoned for now. This attack had been too close to home for the Republic, however. For the first time, the Senate issued a galactic bounty on Grievous, wanting him dead or alive. They were desperate, willing to turn to the underworld itself if it meant eliminating the Cyborg general. Dooku, on the other hand, had grown tired of the cycle of victories and failures. He needed his general to prove himself once more. A perfect opportunity arose when Newt Gunray, the leader of the Trade Federation, escaped Republic custody. The Jedi placed a tracker on him, hoping to follow his signal. Unbeknownst to them, though, they wouldn't be encountering Gunray there. Chapter 7: A Test of Strength. During the war, Grievous maintained a personal fortress on the third moon of the planet Vasek. The stronghold housed his repair droid EVA-4D, his prized collection of Jedi lightsabers and Padawan braids, as well as his pet Rogwart, Gore. One fateful day, while returning to his castle aboard the Soulless One, Grievous drifted into a rare moment of unconsciousness, reliving fragmented memories of his past as Kaimin Jai Shilal, the Kalish warlord. He recalled his transformation, the loss of his flesh, and the countless battles he had fought since becoming a cyborg. However, his recollection was abruptly interrupted when he arrived at the fortress, sensing that something was wrong. Upon entering his stronghold, he discovered his Magna Guards lying inactive. Before he could react, Jedi Master Kit Fisto and his former Padawan Nadar Veb emerged from the shadows, accompanied by a squad of clone troopers. The Jedi had infiltrated his castle, and Grievous, despite the element of surprise, welcomed the challenge. Drawing 2 lightsabers, he engaged the Jedi. Grievous quickly demonstrated why the Jedi feared him so much, quickly forcing the Jedi into a defensive stance. However, as the duel went on with the help of the clones, the Jedi managed to sever his legs. Though he felt no pain, the loss of his legs put him at a severe disadvantage. Seeing the futility of continuing the fight in this condition, Grievous quickly cut down a few of the clones and created just enough of a distraction to escape to his hidden command center. Inside it, EVA-4D informed him that the Magna Guards had been remotely deactivated for recharging. At that moment, it was clear to Grievous Dooku had set him up. It was a test of his strength. If Grievous died, then he had outlived his usefulness. If he survived, then he would prove himself worthy. Grievous hated being manipulated. How many times did his master want him to prove himself? Then again though, his warrior's pride refused to let this be his end. Meanwhile, Kit Fisto realized their surprise advantage was gone. Fighting Grievous in his own castle was now a suicide mission. But before they could escape, they reactivated Magna Guards fired a rocket into the Republic shuttle, destroying their only way out. They were now trapped in the lair of Grievous, and now he was in control. In his repair chamber, Grievous's droid assistant, A4D, replaced his damaged legs and mask while his cybernetic pet, Gore, was let loose to deal with the intruders. A4D, seeing the mess he had to repair, questioned why the general submitted to the cybernetic changes, which Grievous quickly answered by calling them a choice of his own. It was a lie, though. Deep down, he knew he had never chosen any of this. His body had been stolen from him, reforged into a weapon. His memories had been altered, his mind twisted by the Sith. But to admit that would mean admitting he had no control, and that was something he could not accept. After his repairs were completed, Grievous decided it was time to deal with the intruders himself, furious that they had killed his beloved pet Gore. As he approached their position, he was alerted that Fisto and Veb had located his hidden command center. Racing back, he found Veb waiting for him outside. The young Jedi, brimming with arrogance, believed he could take on the General alone. Amused by the young Jedi's attitude, Grievous engaged him and, after locking his sabers, quickly shot him with a blaster. The Padawan fell, and Grievous had yet another lightsaber to add to his ever-growing collection. All that was left was Kit Fisto. After chasing Fisto to the castle's outer platform, Grievous engaged Fisto in a duel by immediately using all 4 limbs. He knew that Fisto was not to be underestimated and required his full strength to defeat. The Jedi at first was overwhelmed, but adapted quickly, managing to use thick fog to his advantage. With that, Fisto was able to sever one of Grievous's arms, and suddenly Grievous found himself on the defense. When Grievous's Magna Guards caught up to him, Fisto managed to escape by leaping onto his Delta 7 starfighter, leaving Grievous seething at another missed kill. Returning to his command center, Grievous attempted to pass off the battle as a victory. Instead, Dooku was unimpressed, stating that while Grievous's victory over Veb was expected, his failure to defeat Fisto showed room for improvement. As the transmission ended, Grievous clenched his fist in frustration. He had killed Nadar Veb, fought Kit Fisto to a standstill, and defended his fortress. But he knew that this wasn't good enough. Should he want to eradicate all Jedi, he had to be more clinical in these situations. Back on Coruscant, the Jedi Council was shaken. Kit Fisto's report confirmed their worst fears. Grievous was corrupting the Jedi Order itself. They had rushed Nadar Veb's rise to knighthood in response to the war, and it had cost him his life. His anger, his recklessness, had made him easy prey for the Cyborg General. Even in defeat, Grievous had inflicted a wound upon the Jedi. Chapter 8: Battle of Felucia and Seleucami. As the war pressed on, General Grievous turned his attention to Felucia, a vital agricultural world supplying the Republic with resources. The Separatists, recognizing its strategic importance, launched a full-scale invasion led by Grievous himself. The Republic, under the command of Jedi Generals Skywalker and Kenobi, and clone forces, were quickly overwhelmed by the sheer number of Separatist battle droids. With the Republic forces withdrawing, Felucia fell into Separatist hands. In another maneuver, Grievous launched an assault on Doran, the homeworld of the Republic-allied Keldors. Although this attack was meant to serve as a diversion, preventing the Jedi from interfering with the Separatist secret droid foundries on Geonosis, Grievous took a lot of pleasure seeing his forces decimate the Keldor. He took joy in their suffering. Any humanity he ever had long been buried. The diversion was a success, and the Republic scrambled to intercept him. Having bought enough time, he retreated his forces from Doran. The Republic at this point desperately sought to capture Grievous, but he remained unpredictable, striking without warning. His next prey turned out to be Jedi Master Eth Koth. After tracking his Venator, he quickly dismantled the ship. As the hull burned and the crew scrambled to defend themselves, Grievous stormed the bridge, flanked by commando droids and his Magna Guards, his sole focus on yet another Jedi trophy that was about to be claimed. Grievous engaged Jedi Master Eth Koth in lightsaber combat and, after a short skirmish, overwhelmed and captured the Jedi Council member. Upon returning to his ship, Grievous reflected on his fight and noticed that honor seemed less and less of a concern to him. When before he always wanted to face the Jedi alone, now he'd rather have his Magna Guards do most of the part. Perhaps there was some sort of boredom setting in, or perhaps the Jedi just were getting weaker. More and more, he saw his droid army as an extension of himself, not just weapons, but a direct manifestation of his power. To instill further fear into the Republic, Grievous transmitted a holo recording to Coruscant, showing them how powerless they were to stop him, torturing the captured Jedi Council member in front of them. His voice was cold, filled with nothing but contempt for his actions against the hated Jedi. Unbeknownst to Grievous, though, Koth was able to send a message using sign language, revealing their location to the Jedi. Soon, a massive Republic strike force, with Obi-Wan Kenobi at its head, exited hyperspace, engaging Grievous's fleet. Although surprised by the sudden assault, a smirk spread below Grievous's masked face as Kenobi's voice crackled over the comm. A rematch with Kenobi. He had secretly waited for that. Grievous's ship seized Kenobi's vessel, dragging it toward the Separatist flagship. As Kenobi's ship was drawn into the hangar, commando droids led the boarding assault, clearing out Republic troops, while the Magna Guards pushed Kenobi toward the bridge to tire him out. Grievous soon entered behind them, and after exchanging a few words with Kenobi, he engaged the Jedi alongside his Magna Guards. Kenobi attempted to cut through the cyborg's facade and reach whatever remained of the warrior he once was, by reminding him of his past. But his words were futile. Grievous was consumed by revenge and only sought to inflict pain upon the Jedi. As the fight went on, Kenobi, one of the greatest duelists in the Order, was pushed to his absolute limit. Grievous's inhuman speed and strikes made him a monstrous opponent, but Kenobi had an edge that he never could have: the Force. Seeing an opening, Kenobi hurled Grievous's own Magna Guards against him. The cyborg barely recovered before he was informed that Skywalker and Gallia had freed Eve Koth. Recognizing he had been outmaneuvered, Grievous snarled in frustration. But there was still one last way to deny the Jedi their victory. He ordered his own ship to open fire on Kenobi's vessel while he was still inside it. The explosions rocked the ship, forcing Kenobi and his troops to abandon their pursuit of him to avoid being killed in the destruction. Meanwhile, Grievous smashed his way through Cody's clones, making his way back to the ship. Adigalia intercepted him, but she too was forced back by the chaos of the battle. His ship, though, at this point had suffered massive damage. Forced to flee his ship, Grievous rushed into a landing craft, descending towards Seleucami's surface. Upon their descent, their landing craft was hit with debris, forcing them down to the surface, trapping Grievous there. The Republic, sensing his weakness, moved in to seize this prime opportunity to capture or kill Grievous once and for all. This was their best chance they ever had. After traveling several kilometers across the barren landscape of Seleucami, Grievous and his remaining droids found an escape pod and managed to send a distress signal to the Separatist fleet, requesting extraction. However, before their rescuers could arrive, Kenobi's forces caught up with them. Once again, the two warriors clashed in a duel. Despite Kenobi's skill, Grievous managed to briefly stun the Jedi, allowing him just enough time to use his built-in grappling hook to latch onto the floating escape shuttle. The last thing Grievous saw was Kenobi's frustrated expression, laughing as he made his escape. Though the battle had not gone entirely in his favor, Grievous had successfully evaded capture. His war against the Republic and the Jedi continued, his hatred burning brighter than ever. Despite this loss, he had reaffirmed his role as the Separatist's most effective enforcer and tactician yet again. Chapter 9: The Battle of Kamino. Following the failed attack on Kamino due to the destruction of the Rishi Moon outpost, General Grievous and Asajj Ventress were once again ordered by Count Dooku to coordinate their efforts for a second assault on the Republic's cloning facility. As the war was progressing, they felt an attack on Kamino would cripple the Republic's ability to replenish its forces. They sought to annihilate Tipoca City, and while also getting the clone template DNA to develop bioweapons against them. Despite having a dislike for her, Grievous was forced to work with Ventress on this mission. As the Separatist fleet engaged the Republic blockade, Grievous employed a sacrificial tactic, using unarmed transport ships as shields to absorb enemy fire. Hidden among the debris were parts for assault ships that could be assembled in the ocean to launch an attack on the city. The tactic worked flawlessly, and Tipoca City was soon under siege. Leading the charge aboard one of the assault craft, Grievous ordered his droids to show no mercy, slaughtering clone troopers as they stormed the city. He advanced toward the command post held by ARC Trooper Commander Colt and his men, cutting through the clone defenses. Near the birth chambers, Grievous ran across Ventress, just as she killed Commander Colt. Although he never held much respect for her, Grievous did something he rarely did and acknowledged her skill, comparing it to his own. When Ventress snared back that he didn't wield the Force, Grievous was reminded again why he disliked her. Annoyed but focusing on the greater task at hand, Grievous ignored the comment, telling her to secure the clone DNA while Grievous led the assault on the clone barracks. As he pushed on, he was intercepted by Obi-Wan Kenobi. The Great General Kenobi was also here and awaiting their next rematch. This time around, the Jedi was no longer holding back, and neither was Grievous. Determined to finally kill Kenobi, in their duel, Grievous managed to disarm Kenobi, but was then pushed back by a Force push. Grievous, seeing that he didn't have the upper hand in this environment, retreated out of the facility toward a hangar pathway in an attempt to break Kenobi's momentum. When the Jedi finally caught up to him, he re-engaged Kenobi yet again. Before he could claim any ground though, the Trident warship crashed through the platform, separating them. Kenobi slipped, falling toward the ocean below. Grievous dug his claws into the wreckage, gripping tight as he watched his nemesis plummet into the stormy sea. He laughed, savoring the thought of Kenobi's pathetic demise. Assuming that Ventress's mission was a success, he retrieved Ventress and retreated from Kamino. However, Ventress had failed her mission, and the battle over Kamino was ultimately a failure in the eyes of the Separatists. The war wasn't going as they had planned. There had been a few big setbacks. In the aftermath of the battle, the Republic Senate and the Separatist Parliament debated whether to escalate the war or pursue peace. Ultimately, the Separatist Parliament voted in favor of peace negotiations. Unwilling to let the war end prematurely, Sidious ordered Count Dooku to sabotage the peace process. Acting on Dooku's command, Grievous knew exactly how to disrupt this peace effort. He orchestrated an undercover operation to deposit a squad of droids disguised as sanitation units onto Coruscant. These droids successfully infiltrated the planet's power grid, causing a massive blackout across the capital. The attack plunged Coruscant into chaos, convincing the Republic leadership that the Separatists were not interested in peace, effectively derailing the peace talks and ensuring the war would continue, and so would the chance for Grievous to continue his conquest against the Jedi. Chapter 10. A Trial in the Force. After slaying yet another Jedi Master and Padawan on Ladiv, Grievous searched their belongings and discovered a holopad containing coordinates. Coordinates that had drawn the Jedi to this jungle-covered world. Following the signal, he arrived at an ancient Jedi temple. Scaling its stone walls with ease, he entered its hollowed halls, sneering at the statues of Jedi Masters erected in their own honor. His statues had been earned, monuments to victory in battle, built upon the bones of his enemies. With a scoff, he ignited his sabers and slashed through the pathetic tributes, reducing them to rubble. After evading several traps built into the temple, he reached the inner sanctum, where a shimmering waterfall of light cascaded before him. Curious about it, he reached into the glow, only to feel nothing. His frustration boiled over, blaming it on Jedi tricks, and then lunged headfirst into the light. Grievous suddenly found himself drifting in an endless void, and then a voice started talking to him, asking him if it was knowledge he seeked here. As Grievous answered by telling the voice that he only seeked the destruction of the Jedi, the voice laughed at him. "You speak of destruction, yet you have only destroyed yourself." And suddenly, Grievous was no more, and he was Kaimin Jai Shalal once again. Flesh and blood, in an organic and unbroken body. Desperate, he argued with the voice. He had become something greater, something stronger. He had made the Jedi fear his name. But the voice objected, telling him that he had sought to destroy a power he had no understanding about nor connection with. Suddenly, Grievous's limbs started to fall away, one by one, watching as his body vanished into the void, leaving only a handful of organs, his heart, his brain, and his eyes floating there. The voice spoke out once again, claiming that he had replaced his divine, force-connected body with that of a machine, claiming he had no power nor the understanding to wield it. As his brain and eyes fell away, dissolving into nothingness, the vision ended. Grievous erupted from the vision stream, gasping, only to realize that nothing had changed. He was still a machine. Furious, he slashed at the shimmering portal, but his attacks had no effect. The temple remained untouched. Seething with rage, he stormed out onto a nearby cliffside, calling in his fleet to begin an orbital bombardment, reducing the temple to flaming rubble. Grievous stood there for hours, watching the ruins burn as day turned to night. But as he turned away, a glow still flickered beneath the rubble. The Force had not been destroyed and could never be destroyed by Grievous. The vision was right in everything. The general had completely abandoned his warrior ways, desperately trying to get revenge on the Jedi. The former freedom fighter who started out with the goal to end the enslavement of his people had enslaved himself completely. Chapter 11. A series of setbacks. The war was still at precedent. Grievous was still determined to destroy the Republic. The next conquest arrived soon when Dooku manipulated the Gungan leader boss Leone in an effort to bring the Gungan Grand Army to the Separatist side. Grievous went to Naboo personally, expecting the Gungans to fight alongside him as Dooku had promised him. However, after landing, Grievous soon found out that the Republic had somehow foiled their plan and his entire droid army had been shut off. To make matters worse, he saw himself surrounded by the entire Gungan army. Despite cutting down several Gungan warriors, he was captured by their combined efforts and the sacrifice of Gungan General Tarpal. Naboo celebrated his capture as a major victory, cherishing the thought that his capture would bring, but the triumph was short-lived. Dooku managed to capture Anakin Skywalker and offered a prisoner exchange. Despite an initial reluctance, Padme Amidala, having her personal connection to Anakin, gave in to her personal feelings over ending the war prematurely, trading Grievous for Skywalker. Freed from his restraints, the general departed Naboo, furious over his imprisonment but eager to return to battle to get back at the Jedi. Following his escape, Grievous resumed his campaign against the Jedi. He learned of the location of the flagship of Jedi Master Adi Gallia. Leading his forces personally, he boarded the ship and engaged Gallia in combat, ultimately capturing her. As he transported his prisoner, Grievous's fleet encountered a pirate warship. Being in high spirits after the successful capture of Gallia, a Jedi Council member, he viewed the pirate ship as target practice, firing on it out of pure amusement. However, his distraction proved costly as Jedi Master Plo Koon, leading a Republic strike force of 5 Venators, attacked his flagship and managed to free Adi Gallia. Though Grievous tried to fight back, the surprise element and the sheer number of Republic forces overwhelmed his ship, forcing him to abandon it. Once again, he was left to flee in order to fight another day. Chapter 12. Operation Dirge's Lance. Though he suffered setbacks, Grievous remained a relentless force in the war. Every battle, every encounter further cemented his reputation as one of the Republic's most feared enemies. Even when captured, he always found a way to return to the battlefield, his hatred for the Jedi and Republic fueling his every move. True to his nature, Grievous turned these defeats into devastation, unleashing a campaign of terror upon the Republic's worlds. His first strike was the Battle of Perrin II, where he slew Jedi Master Sinan and claimed his lightsaber as yet another trophy. Soon after, he led the seizure of Banvar Station and the conquest of Vandos. Alongside the bounty hunter Dirge, he orchestrated a campaign that would set the Corellian trade spine ablaze. He led a blitz assault, striking hundreds of worlds along the Republic's most vital trade route to the core worlds. This blitzkrieg became known as Operation Dirge's Lance. In the campaign, Grievous managed to capture the core world of Duro, forcing a public surrender from its chief representative live on the HoloNet. He knew that fear itself was a weapon, one as valuable as any fleet or army. To further instill fear in the Republic, Grievous went on to order a sustained orbital bombardment of Humbarine, a founding world of the Republic with a cityscape spanning the entire planet, just like Coruscant. For an hour, his warships rained fire and death upon the Ecumenopolis. The planet's crust fragmented, its millennia-old civilization reduced to molten rock. After destroying Humbarine, he attempted to test out a new bacterial weapon. In the Wemel sector, Grievous deployed the Loadorvian Brain Plague. From humans to Rhodians, it made no distinction. Millions perished and the Wemel sector was cleared of life. At this point, the public perception of General Grievous, due to the brutality of his campaign, had shifted yet again. No longer was he seen as just a Jedi hunter, he was now one of the worst war criminals, a name whispered in fear across the Republic, unaware of the fact that that is exactly what Grievous was all about. Instilling fear into his enemies, be it the Jedi or other foes. If they were fearful, he had an advantage over them. Grievous sought to break the Republic's morale. Operation Dirge's Lance was a full success. The Republic was in disarray, scrambling their forces away from the Outer Rim to defend the core worlds. The Separatists, in the meantime, could move in on these planets in the Outer Rim. Chapter 13. Descent into Inhuman Warfare. In 20 BBY, Grievous managed to kidnap Republic Ambassador Kian, using the hostage as bait to lure Jedi into a trap on Vandos. The first 2 knights to respond were cut down and Grievous seized a Mon Calamari starcruiser, which held both a Jedi Master and a group of younglings. This was exactly what he had been hoping for. He quickly executed their master but kept the younglings alive, imprisoning them. Grievous had begun some cruel experimentations with transferring Force-sensitive beings into droid bodies, much like his own transformation. He thought that if he succeeded in doing so, he could create unstoppable warriors, combatants free from the weakness of flesh, yet still retaining their connection to the Force. With the group of younglings, he had several test subjects for his experiments. However, before the experiment could begin, a rescue team of Jedi stormed the Separatist lab. Annoyed that the Jedi arrived earlier than he anticipated, he engaged the Jedi rescue team in battle. Although he managed to defeat 2 Padawans from the strike team, the younglings were saved. Disappointed by the setback, Grievous turned his attention back to the war. During the Battle of Honoghr, a defoliator chemical was accidentally released, wiping out the planet's entire ecosystem. The event gave him an idea. With the brain plague and chemical weapons, the Separatists could devastate entire worlds before even setting foot on them. By deploying biological weapons, he could turn every Republic world into a graveyard, making invading them mere child's play. Grievous petitioned his idea to Dooku to expand the use of bioweapons across the Republic, but to his surprise, the Sith Lord refused. Grievous couldn't understand this. After all, deploying these viruses across the Republic worlds would easily secure their victory. Unbeknownst to Grievous, though, he had stumbled upon a secret, one his master was hiding from him. The Clone Wars was prefabricated, and victory was never an option for either side until the time was right. Knowing it was futile to go against his master's wishes, Grievous saw himself once again grinding out battles against the Republic. Grievous went on to launch a full-scale assault on Boz Pitti, where he faced Jedi Master Soon Bates. He easily killed him and then went on to cut through the clones on the battlefield with the lightsaber of the Jedi he had just killed. But then the tide turned. Grievous saw as his droids were hurled across the battlefield. Moments later, a human Jedi with a purple lightsaber stood in front of him. It was Mace Windu. Dooku had told him that he was one of the most powerful Jedi alive. Trying to take the Jedi by surprise, Grievous launched himself at Windu, but with a single motion of Windu's hand, a damaged staff was hurled at the cyborg. Grievous collapsed, momentarily unconscious. His Magna Guards quickly rushed in, distracting Windu long enough and dragging his battered body to safety. Grievous awoke on his ship enraged. His Jedi kill streak had ended in the most embarrassing way possible. Boz Pitti went on to be lost due to Windu's involvement. Grievous was quickly involved in battle again, though when Wat Tambor was trapped in his fortress on Zagoba when the Republic launched a massive assault. Grievous led the defense, holding back the clone forces while Tambor remained under siege. During the battle, Grievous encountered a young Boba Fett, who had been sent to kill Wat Tambor. Scuffing at the child in front of him, he quickly hurled the child into a cluster of poisonous fungus, leaving Boba for dead. The Battle of Zagoba went on for months after that, before the Republic finally claimed victory. Shortly after, Grievous was once again called to protect a CIS leader. This time, to his great irritation, it was Newt Gunray. Gunray was everything Grievous despised. Cowardly, greedy, and utterly spineless. Yet, despite his contempt, the general was forced to come to his aid when Gunray recklessly returned to Cato Neimoidia to recover some personal trinkets he had left behind. Tracked by Republic intelligence, Gunray was nearly destroyed by clone starfighters. At first, Grievous hesitated, almost letting the Neimoidian perish, but ultimately he knew that losing Gunray would upset Dooku, damage his own reputation, and potentially give the Republic access to Separatist secrets. Grievous eliminated the pursuing Republic fighters, but the damage had already been done. Republic slicers had recovered Gunray's Mechno chair, which contained data on the upcoming Separatist offensive at Belderone. Armed with this intelligence, the Republic ambushed Grievous's fleet, wiping out nearly all of his ships. The only redeeming factor Grievous could find was that 27 Jedi perished in the battle. Upon discovering how the Republic had learned of their plans at Belderone, Grievous was infuriated. He nearly crushed Gunray's skull, only stopping at the last moment out of fear of Dooku's retribution. Chapter 14: The Slaughter of Dathomir. Following Asajj Ventress's betrayal of Count Dooku, the Sith Lord turned to General Grievous to carry out his vengeance. Grievous happily complied, as he got the chance to get back at Ventress, taking his fleet to Dathomir. Upon arrival, he commanded the invasion from within one of his landing ships. He had hyena bombers level the outer villages, while ranks of droids pushed into the dark forest, using defoliator tanks to burn away the sacred burial trees that housed the spirits of their ancestors. The entire landscape was on fire, nothing left living. As the Night Sisters fought back, Ventress tried to turn the tide by challenging Grievous to a duel. Grievous, confident in his superiority, accepted the challenge and engaged Ventress in combat. At first, the Cyborg general dominated the fight, taunting her of being an unworthy opponent. After all, he had beaten her easily before. However, he underestimated Ventress's resolve and desperation. Ventress was fighting for her life here, throwing herself at him with everything she had. With that, she was able to use a gap in his defense to cut off one of his hands, knocking him to the ground with the Force. Grievous found himself on the floor, with Ventress raising her lightsabers to deliver the final blow. Grievous reacted instinctively. The honor of the Kaleesh warrior had died long ago, replaced by pure survival instinct. He screamed fire, having his droids open fire on Ventress, wounding her and knocking her down. Before Grievous could deliver the killing blow, an army of undead Night Sisters, resurrected by the dark magics of Mother Talzin, charged at Grievous, swarming him. Although the undead warriors couldn't really harm his armored body, they held him off long enough for Ventress to escape. But that didn't matter now. Dooku told Grievous to leave Ventress and go after Mother Talzin, the more important target. Cutting through waves of undead warriors and Night Sisters, he pushed into Mother Talzin's village, leading the droid charge at the front now, relishing the massacre. In the Night Sisters' coven, he found and executed the Elder Shaman responsible for the rise of the undead warriors, while Mother Talzin disappeared into a green mist. With the death of the Shaman, the undead warriors collapsed, sealing the Night Sisters' already impending doom. Grievous then went on to raid every Night Sister village, leaving none behind. Each Night Sister on Dathomir was massacred, and the planet was left in ruins, its once thriving coven reduced to a graveyard. The mission was a resounding success for the Separatists, as Grievous had not only secured Dooku's safety, but it also obliterated an entire faction that could have posed a threat to the Sith's grand plan. Chapter 15: Battle of Florum. Following his victory at Dathomir, Grievous turned his sights back on the Outer Rim. After hearing from intelligence that Kenobi's fleet was at the planet Florum, he couldn't help himself to strike at his most hated adversary. He took his fleet and launched a surprise attack against Kenobi, devastating their fleet. Yet again, as in their other encounters, Grievous boarded the ship and engaged Kenobi. This time around, he managed to gain the upper hand in their duel, pushing Kenobi back and forcing him to abandon his ship. Although Kenobi set the ship to self-destruct, forcing Grievous to leave without getting any intel he had hoped for, it was still a victory for Grievous. The Jedi fleet over Florum was gone. He had bested his greatest rival, and now he could go for yet another target. Grievous targeted the planet Florum, home to the Weequay pirate king Hondo Ohnaka. This invasion was not just another conquest, it was meant as retribution. Years earlier, Ohnaka and his pirates had captured Count Dooku and held him for ransom. Now, under Dooku's orders, Grievous sought to make Ohnaka pay. Grievous landed on Florum with his forces, swiftly taking control of Ohnaka's stronghold. The pirate leader was captured, and his men were forced to submit. However, the situation had an unforeseen turn, when seemingly out of nowhere Ahsoka Tano and 6 Jedi younglings showed up and freed Hondo, trying to escape with him. Grievous personally gave chase, riding a CIS combat speeder. As the pirates and the Jedi split off, Grievous decided to chase after Ahsoka's group, forcing their escape vehicle to crash. As the dust settled, the Cyborg warlord emerged from the wreckage, his yellow eyes gleaming, cheering that there were so many lightsabers he could add to his collection. However, before he could move in on them, the Slave One arrived to help the Jedi escape. Seeing the Jedi were about to escape, Grievous pushed on and engaged in a duel with Ahsoka, who had stayed behind to try and fend him off to allow the others to escape. She had grown stronger since their last encounter, yet she was still no match for the Cyborg general. Grievous overpowered her easily, taunting her and playing with her. He relished seeing his prey struggle to fight back against him. Just as Grievous was about to finish Ahsoka, she managed to use the Force to push him back and escape. With Ohnaka gone and the Jedi escaped, Grievous ordered his forces to raise the pirate stronghold, leaving Florum in ruins before withdrawing his army. Chapter 16: Crystal Conspiracy. As Darth Sidious moved the Clone Wars toward its final stage, he entrusted Grievous with another vital task: to retrieve an enormous Kyber crystal, a priceless relic of unimaginable power. The crystal had fallen into the hands of Sugi arms dealers, who planned to sell it to Count Dooku. The deal was to take place on the neutral world of Utapau, with local Amani warriors providing security. Grievous arrived on Utapau with his Magna Guards, overseeing the final negotiations. However, he soon found himself in a chase through the planet's cave networks when Kenobi and Skywalker intercepted the deal and stole the crystal, where the Jedi managed to shake him. Frustrated, Grievous returned to Pal City, where he was surprised to learn that the crystal had been secured in a Separatist shuttle and the Jedi had been captured by the Utapau security force. When Grievous arrived at the landing site, expecting to confront the Jedi, he was once again surprised to learn that the Jedi had escaped yet again. Furious, he executed the Utapau governor before turning his attention back towards the crystal. The Jedi didn't matter after all, he thought to himself as the Kyber crystal was secured. However, when the shuttle with the crystal took off, the two Jedi proved to be a nuisance once again, forcing the shuttle to make an emergency landing in a Separatist ship. However, the Jedi's little maneuver had separated them. When Grievous arrived in the hangar to confront them, he once again stood face to face with Kenobi. After more than 2 years of rivalry and several duels, he found himself overpowering Kenobi in this duel, disarming him and seizing him by the throat. Choking them, he then slammed him to the ground. For a moment, Kenobi believed this was it for him, but Grievous didn't want it to end this easily. Extremely content to have bested his adversary, he prepared an execution chamber to kill his rival slowly and painfully. However, before Grievous could follow through with this plan, Skywalker freed Kenobi and together they fought their way back to the crystal. To Grievous's dismay, the Jedi tricked the droids into firing on the Kyber crystal, provoking a chain reaction as the crystal overloaded and exploded. Realizing what was about to happen, Grievous fled to his starfighter, pursuing the Jedi as they escaped into hyperspace. The explosion from the crystal consumed the entire Separatist fleet, with Grievous barely managing to escape. He had failed his mission, and to make matters worse, his opponents roamed free once again. Chapter 17. Encounter with Grandmaster Yoda. Soon after, Grievous launched an assault on Harun Kal, where Jedi General Depa Billaba was stationed. He made quick work of her forces, devastating her clone battalion and almost killing Billaba in their encounter. Her duel with Grievous left Billaba in such a bad state that she stepped down from the Jedi Council to recover mentally. At some point, Grievous was assigned to oversee Operation Titan, a secret project aimed at developing a new breed of super battle droids called Mega Droids. Upon arrival, Grievous was surprised to find that none other than Jedi Grandmaster Yoda had infiltrated the facility. The cyborg had not expected to see this Jedi of all of them here, but cherished the opportunity to face the teacher of Dooku. Upon finding Yoda, he was surprised by his small size, but greeted him nonetheless. Yoda, however, didn't even flinch and just kept downloading the files from the computer while calmly replying to him that he wasn't fit to wield a lightsaber as it's a Jedi's weapon. Grievous lunged forward, his blade spinning in a blur, but Yoda casually leapt over the cyborg, delivering a quick strike to his head. A fresh mark scorched into his faceplate, but Grievous merely laughed. As the duel continued, Grievous found himself unable to even land a single strike. As Yoda evaded every strike and suddenly, he was frozen. The Jedi used the Force to freeze him in place and, with another flick of his tiny little hand, sent him hurling backward into the wall. Grievous quickly recovered, his rage fueling him. His battle droids arrived and opened fire on Yoda. However, instead of aiding their general, their attack gave Yoda the perfect distraction, allowing him to escape before Grievous could stop him. Yoda was gone. Enraged, the general crushed a battle droid beneath his mechanical foot. The Jedi had not only discovered vital information about Operation Titan, but had also humiliated him in battle. But when reflecting on it, he recognized that the Jedi Grandmaster had completely outmaneuvered him. He swore to one day get his revenge. Chapter 18. Destroying the Shadow Collective. Following Darth Maul's escape from Darth Sidious's custody, Dooku summoned General Grievous and tasked him with hunting down the rogue Sith Lord. Grievous wasn't surprised to hear of Maul's escape. He had previously warned that Maul was too dangerous to be left alive and should have been executed when they had the chance. However, Dooku wanted Grievous to force Maul into a position of desperation, one that would compel him to seek help from Mother Talzin, the Night Sister leader whom Sidious saw as the biggest threat left to oppose the rule of the Sith. Complying with his master's orders, Grievous directed his fleet toward the planet Zanbar. Grievous knew the battle would not be easily won. Unlike the Republic's clone troopers, whom the droids had fought countless times, Maul's Mandalorian warriors were far more dangerous and unpredictable. As the battle commenced, the Separatist droid army stormed the Shadow Collective's stronghold. Amid the chaos, Grievous personally entered the battlefield, cutting down Mandalorians with his lightsabers. He soon found Maul on the battlefield. Just like with the Jedi, rather than engaging him immediately, Grievous first set his Magna Guards to exhaust Maul before facing him himself. When Maul had defeated the Magna Guards, Grievous came in and the two warriors clashed. Although Maul was a formidable warrior, Grievous was a different type of menace. especially after having winded Maul down with his Magna Guards. Grievous managed to kick Maul back, taunting Maul that his forces had been annihilated. However, Maul refused to yield. Calling in reinforcements, his Gauntlet starfighters rained down fire upon the battlefield, forcing Grievous's forces to scatter. By the time the dust settled, both armies had sustained heavy casualties. Though Maul had managed to escape, his army had suffered tremendous losses. Reporting back to Dooku, Grievous reported on his victory. Maul had taken a severe hit and would inevitably seek out Talzin just like they had planned. As Maul regrouped, Grievous's spies intercepted intelligence confirming that Mandalorian warships were amassing on Ord Mantell. Grievous proposed a swift strike against Maul's growing army, but Dooku advised patience, reminding him that their primary goal was still to locate Talzin. Grievous, however, was still skeptical of the importance placed on the Night Sister matriarch and questioned why she was considered such a threat, considering he had already wiped out her entire coven. Dooku shivered, responding that Talzin's powers were so vast that even Sidious feared her and that she could jeopardize the Sith's plans. Shortly thereafter, the Separatists detected a ship departing from Dathomir. Suspecting that Talzin was aboard, Grievous and his fleet made their way towards Ord Mantell, preparing to obliterate Maul's forces and Talzin. Upon arriving at Ord Mantell, Grievous ordered an immediate orbital bombardment. After the dust had settled, Dooku, alongside Magna Guards and a droid army, descended to search for Maul and Talzin among the ruins. However, something felt amiss to Grievous. The warships that had drawn them to the planet were nowhere to be found. The General's instincts soon proved correct as the missing Mandalorian warships suddenly emerged, launching a counterattack on the Separatist fleet. In the midst of the battle, Maul personally boarded Grievous's command ship. Storming into the bridge, Maul single-handedly dismantled nearly every battle droid in his path. After Maul arrived at the bridge, Grievous found himself surrounded by Maul's forces. A quick duel with Maul ensued, with Maul overpowering him and holding his lightsaber to Grievous's throat. Maul presented him with a choice: either deactivate the Separatist droid forces or die. With little alternative, Grievous was forced to comply, effectively shutting down his entire army. This in turn led to the capture of Dooku on the ground as well. Held as a prisoner aboard Maul's ship, Grievous and Dooku were to be used as leverage in an attempt to bargain with Sidious. However, the Dark Lord dismissed Maul's demands outright, stating that he had no further use for either Dooku or Grievous and would simply let them die. Maul then ordered his captives to be separated. Dooku was taken for interrogation, while Grievous was placed under heavy guard in the brig. As he was led away, the cyborg turned towards Dooku, telling him it would be rather unfortunate should he have to add Dooku's lightsaber to his collection in their next meeting, confident that he would escape. When the Republic unexpectedly attacked Maul's forces on Ord Mantell, Dooku, using the Force, manipulated the locks on Grievous's cell door, granting him the opportunity to escape. Without hesitation, Grievous tore through his Mandalorian guards with his bare hands and feet, crushing their bodies with sheer force. Finding an escape pod, he fled the ship to rendezvous with Sidious. Maul had to be stopped. Following Sidious's instructions, Grievous and a detachment of battle droids tracked Dooku's signal to Dathomir aboard the Scimitar. Activating the ship's cloaking device, they approached undetected. Landing on the barren world, Grievous and Sidious made their way towards the ancient chamber where Dooku's signal led. Inside, Maul had just completed a ritual allowing Talzin to temporarily possess Dooku's body. As Sidious engaged the possessed Dooku in battle, Grievous once again dueled Maul. Maul soon found himself at the brink of his power as the cyborg's relentless slashes came down on him. In a last-ditch effort though, Maul managed to force-push Grievous out of the chamber. This took the general out of the battle temporarily as he had to claw his way back into the chamber. Upon arriving, he witnessed the final moments of the battle. Talzin and Sidious were in a stalemate, with Sidious engaging her magic with Force Lightning. Maul was standing behind Talzin and was thrown back by Talzin and being dragged away for escape. Talzin soon collapsed after being overpowered by Sidious. Seeing the opening, Grievous calmly walked up to her, igniting both his lightsabers and executing Talzin in front of a distraught Maul. With this, he had destroyed the final Night Sister and fulfilled his task to completion. With Talzin dead, Grievous commanded his forces to secure Dathomir, eliminating the remnants of the Shadow Collective. Though Maul had managed to escape, the Sith had achieved a significant victory, erasing one of the last major threats to the Sith's impending rule over the galaxy. Chapter 19: Final Phase of the Clone Wars. After defeating Maul's Shadow Collective, Grievous turned his attention back to the Clone Wars. There, Grievous encountered Depa Billaba once again. Fixating on finishing what he had started, he demanded her death. Face to face with Billaba once more, Grievous ignited his 2 lightsabers and attacked. Billaba, stronger than before after having gained clarity upon her defeat, parried every strike before hurling him back with the Force. Snarling, Grievous re-engaged, splitting his arms to strike with 4 blades at once. Billaba barely managed to sever 2 of his lower hands, but Grievous landed a deep slash across her back, leaving her heavily wounded. Despite the injury, Billaba refused to fall. Soon, the clones and Caleb Doom rushed in, forcing Grievous to fall back. As the Republic secured Magito, Billaba chose not to pursue him. She had learned to live with regret. Following the loss of the Kyber Crystal, Utapau seemed like the ideal refuge for the Separatist leadership. Darth Sidious commanded the key Separatist council members to gather on Utapau, and Grievous returned, this time with an invasion force. Thousands of battle droids and Magna Guards stormed the peaceful world, forcing the Utapau leadership into submission. When the ruling Utapau committee hesitated to comply, Grievous ordered their execution. A fortified base was constructed in Pao City, and a massively modified core ship took control of Level 10, serving as the headquarters of the Separatist forces. By the 3rd year of the Clone Wars, the Republic had seized the momentum, steadily pushing the Separatists back. Despite General Grievous's victories on Dathomir, Florum, and other battlefronts, the Confederacy of Independent Systems had suffered heavy losses, including the majority of its droid factories and key territories. Forced to retreat, the Separatists were largely confined to the Outer Rim, where the Republic intensified its campaign in what became known as the Outer Rim Sieges. The Republic launched blockades on key Separatist strongholds, stretching their forces thin. Clashes erupted not only in the Outer Rim, but also in the Mid-Rim and the colonies, further pressuring the CIS war machine. As part of this desperate struggle, Grievous set his sights on the critical shipyards of Annexus, a planet located on the coreward edge of the Outer Rim and home to vital Republic shipbuilding facilities. To claim Annexes, Grievous collaborated with Admiral Trench, who deployed large droid forces in a prolonged and costly battle for control of the shipyards. The Republic, however, mounted a fierce resistance, and despite the combined efforts of Trench and Grievous, the campaign ended in disaster for the Separatists. In the final engagement, Admiral Trench was killed, his fleet was obliterated, and the Annexes shipyards were secured by the Republic, marking yet another crushing blow to the CIS war effort. As the war raged, Grievous attempted to force the Wookiees to join the Separatists. Kashyyyk held tactical value, serving as a defensive stronghold, and was home to the Klatuvak Guild archives, which contained knowledge of unknown hyperspace routes. At first, the Wookiees remained neutral, engaging in diplomatic negotiations with both sides. Growing impatient though, Grievous ordered an all-out invasion, believing that sheer force would persuade them. This backfired spectacularly though, as instead of submitting to the aggression, the Wookiees declared full-scale war against the Separatists. Soon the Republic entered the war, which made the Battle of Kashyyyk yet another full-scale war that was draining the Separatist resources. Chapter 20. Battle of Coruscant. The Separatists were on the brink of defeat. After several setbacks at Annexes and having their supply cut off from the core worlds and being pushed toward the Outer Rim, a decisive victory was needed to turn the tide of war. Then Darth Sidious gave the order: an assault on Coruscant, the capital of the Republic. Grievous was provided coordinates of the Nexus route that would allow the Separatist fleet to bypass Republic defenses and launch a direct assault on Coruscant. For years, the Republic believed such an attack was impossible, as only they held the coordinates of the aforementioned Nexus route. Grievous's plan was simple: strike at the heart of the Republic, forcing the Jedi to abandon the Outer Rim sieges to defend Coruscant and capture the Chancellor for ransom. Seizing the last opportunity for a Separatist victory, Grievous mobilized his forces. The final offensive was launched. The Clone Wars had entered its final stage. Upon exiting hyperspace, the Separatist battleships engaged Republic defense forces in orbit. Grievous orchestrated chaos on the surface by having squadrons of Vulture droids execute suicide runs into the city's infrastructure, causing panic and destruction among the civilian population. With the city in disarray, he had his droid army land on the surface to engage the Jedi on the surface of Coruscant. Amid the turmoil, he personally ascended to the surface and led an elite strike force to 500 Republica, the Chancellor's residential complex. Meanwhile, Jedi Masters Mace Windu, Shaak Ti, and Kit Fisto rushed to Palpatine's aid in order to protect him. As they attempted to move the Chancellor via maglev train to a secure location, Grievous and his Magna Guards intercepted them. The Cyborg General engaged Windu and Fisto in a lightsaber duel atop the speeding train. Despite Windu's unique fighting style, which Grievous was unfamiliar with, Grievous quickly adapted. He wouldn't let this encounter with Windu end like his last one. The duel ended though when Windu force-pushed Grievous off the train, sending him plummeting into the city below. However, the General was not so easily defeated. His droid forces retrieved him using a hijacked gunship, allowing him to continue his hunt for Palpatine. Eventually, he reached the Chancellor's hardened bunker, using security codes provided by Sidious to gain entry. Inside, he slaughtered waves of clone troopers and 4 of the Chancellor's Jedi protectors. With his path clear, Grievous seized Palpatine and prepared to make his escape. En route back, Shaak Ti attempted a desperate attempt to stop him, engaging the General in a duel but was no match to the cyborg. However, Grievous ultimately spared her, instructing her to deliver a message to the Jedi that their Chancellor was gone. As he fled, Windu managed to catch up to him and launched one final attack, using the Force to crush the plating around Grievous's organ sac. The duranium metal sliced into his remaining biological tissue, permanently worsening his already ragged breathing. Despite his injury, he had succeeded in his mission. It was a hard-fought victory, but a victory nonetheless. The Chancellor was brought aboard the Invisible Hand, Grievous's flagship, to get the Republic to surrender their forces. Meanwhile, the battle in space raged on against the Republic's defense fleet. Jedi Generals Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi rushed to Coruscant upon learning of the Chancellor's capture. Battling their way through the chaos, they boarded Grievous's flagship. Once aboard, the 2 Jedi successfully fought through waves of droids, eventually confronting Count Dooku. Grievous during this time was on the bridge in negotiations with a Republic officer about the capture of Palpatine. He turned into the holovid to check in on Dooku's progress. To his surprise, he saw a lifeless body laying there that resembled Dooku. The Jedi, as well as the Chancellor, were both gone. Realizing slowly what he was looking at, his mask was blankly emotionless as ever. After a few moments, in a murderous tone, he said, "Dooku is dead, and the Jedi are on the loose. They have the Chancellor. Find them and bring them to me." He curled his metal fingers into a fist, then crushed down on the security panel with so much force that it collapsed the entire panel. Grievous was shocked and in anger. He couldn't fathom that any person in the galaxy aside from Sidious was able to come close, yet alone defeat Dooku, considering the countless sessions he had with Dooku in which he had failed time and time again to beat him. Although Grievous never held any affection for Dooku, he always held respect for him as a warrior. For the first time in the Clone Wars, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: fear. The 2 Jedi, powerful enough to best Dooku, were on the loose, and he would certainly be their next target. Deep in thought, Grievous was contacted by his droids. They had captured the Jedi in ray shields and immobilized them. Grievous ordered them to be brought back to the bridge, reveling in his triumph over the Jedi. Although he had initially been shocked at the death of Dooku, he now felt a sense of pride to have outlasted his master in this war. On the bridge, he once again stood face to face with Kenobi, and for the first time, Skywalker as well. Although they had clashed indirectly in plenty of battles, somehow they had never met face to face until this point. Having knowledge of the tales and legends about Skywalker, he was rather surprised to see a Jedi not much older than a child standing in front of him, far from the great warrior he had pictured to himself. When R2-D2 created the distraction which the Jedi used to free themselves, Grievous hesitated to engage himself. His thoughts called back to Dooku's lifeless body, one of the greatest warriors in his eyes who had been bested by the very Jedi that were standing in front of him. In a split decision, Grievous shattered the bridge's viewport using an electro staff, exposing the room to the vacuum of space. While the Jedi managed to remain inside, Grievous, protected by his internal life support systems, was sucked into the void. Using his grappling hook, he latched onto the exterior of the ship and climbed his way to an escape pod. The battle had been lost. The loss of Dooku and the loss of the Chancellor couldn't be redeemed. Before ejecting, he ordered every escape pod on the ship to launch, leaving the Jedi and Palpatine trapped aboard the crippled vessel. Grievous was picked up by a Separatist landing craft and, upon entering it, gave a full retreat to Utapau, where he had brought the Separatist Council a few months ago, attempting to regroup his forces there. 2/3 of the Separatist forces managed to survive the assault on Coruscant and retreated into hyperspace. The Battle of Coruscant had been the most decisive loss yet, and he knew coming back from here to win the war would be a very steep task. Chapter 21 Endgame. With Count Dooku dead, Grievous was officially now the leader of the entire Separatist alliance. This meant he was de facto at the head of military and the Separatist politics from here on out. Although defeated at Coruscant, he ordered the remaining forces to engage in a counterattack in the Outer Rim, where battles on Kashyyyk, Felucia, Magneto, and several other fronts were still raging. Unbeknownst to Grievous, however, Darth Sidious had other plans for him. The war had served its purpose at this point, and Grievous had also served his purpose. He was to serve as nothing more than bait for its final stage, drawing Obi-Wan Kenobi away from Coruscant and, more importantly, from Anakin Skywalker, whom Sidious intended to fully claim as his new apprentice. Though Grievous was unaware of the Sith Lord's deception, he sensed something was wrong. The recent raid on Coruscant had cost the Separatists dearly, and Dooku's death left a gaping hole in their leadership structure. He himself had also suffered a rather critical injury by Windu, leaving him weaker than before. However, when Sidious contacted him, the Sith Lord reassured him that the war was nearly won, and that a new apprentice would soon take Dooku's place. Grievous remained skeptical, but as he saw no other alternatives really, he followed through on his order, relocating the Separatist Council to Mustafar while fortifying Utapau further as his new stronghold. With the Republic gaining momentum after Dooku's death and the Battle of Coruscant, capturing or killing Grievous became the Jedi's top priority. As predicted by Sidious, Obi-Wan Kenobi arrived on the planet, confronting the General in his secret command center. Amused by his old foe's persistence, but still having his injury in mind, Grievous ordered his Magna Guards to eliminate the Jedi, only for Kenobi to swiftly dispatch them. Realizing that the fight would be his alone, while also harboring back to his warrior ways, the Cyborg drew 4 lightsabers and engaged his nemesis for their final duel. Though Grievous attacked at blinding speeds, striking at over 20 blows per second, he was unable to break through Kenobi's defense. Despite having held his own against countless Jedi and even a Sith Lord like Maul during the war, Kenobi's defense proved to be unmatched in their final duel, unlike any of their previous encounters, with Kenobi being completely entranced in the Force, parrying every single one of Grievous's strikes. Recognizing the General's growing frustration, Kenobi altered his tactics, adjusting his parries. With that, he managed to sever 2 of Grievous's mechanical arms, leaving Grievous with only 2 arms left. Before the duel could continue, Commander Cody and the 212th Attack Battalion arrived, launching a full-scale assault on the Separatist forces in Pao City. Despite the chaos, Grievous remained defiant. He taunted Kenobi, warning that the Jedi Order would soon fall. Kenobi responded with a powerful force push, slamming Grievous into a wall and knocking his remaining lightsabers from his grasp. Recognizing that he was beaten once again, the Cyborg mounted his wheelbike and attempted to flee. A high-speed chase ensued, with Kenobi pursuing him atop a Varactyl named Boga. The 2 warriors clashed repeatedly during the pursuit before ultimately crashing onto Grievous's private landing platform. There, the duel devolved into a brutal fistfight. Grievous's inherent mechanical strength gave him the advantage, with him easily throwing Kenobi around. Kenobi, though, realizing Grievous had a loose chest plate, seized his chance. Using all his strength, he pried open the Cyborg's armor, exposing his vulnerable gutsack. Enraged, Grievous hurled Kenobi aside, prepared to finish him with an electro-staff. However, before Grievous could finish him, Kenobi summoned a blaster on the floor with the Force. Kenobi aimed and fired multiple shots. They didn't miss. They directly hit Grievous's exposed organs. The General staggered back, a metallic shriek twisting into a horrifying death cry. His body ignited from within, flames bursting from his eye sockets as the last remnants of his organic self were incinerated. His lifeless body collapsed. The greatest Jedi killer and single biggest threat to the Republic was finally dead. Epilogue. With Grievous dead, the Separatist forces on Utapau fell into chaos. Without their supreme commander, the droid army lost its coordination, allowing the Republic to quickly overwhelm the remaining CIS forces. Meanwhile, on Mustafar, the Separatist Council awaited their fate, unaware that Sidious had already planned their execution at the hands of his new apprentice, Darth Vader. Back on Coruscant, the Jedi Council received news of Grievous's demise. While they celebrated what seemed to be the end of the war, they failed to realize that Palpatine's true plan was already in motion. Just like Grievous, all of them had been set up and been part of a grand plan. Just like Grievous, they were all going to die. If Grievous had been able to see the destruction of the Jedi Order, he certainly would have had a smile under his blank mask. His wish did come true in the end.